And I don't see an opportunity for a reset on the horizon. With the Senate deadlocked 50-50 plus Vice President Kamala Harris, let's stop kidding ourselves. The Republicans won't give this administration the satisfaction of passing anything of consequence between now and the midterms. So there's just not a prospect of rescue legislatively. God forbid there's some catastrophe that makes us rally around the flag, though I don't even know if we would do that these days. Politically, it's the bleakest of pictures imaginable for the White House. So what is the president to do? This week, Amy Parnes and Hannah Trudeau published a piece in The Hill saying, everywhere you go in Washington, people are wondering the same thing. Will Joe Biden run for re-election? Clearly, those people are not taking him at face value because he has said that he will. No doubt the fact that he will be 81 in November of 2024 is a major reason that some people are disbelieving, and I'm among the skeptical. Now listen, I don't say that with any animus. To the contrary, I wish good things for the president's leadership and his personal health. He's a patriot, a decent and honorable man, but I can't see him running again. And maybe he needs to deal with that reality sooner than later. There's precedent. In 1968, Lyndon Johnson, who in 1964 had won the biggest political landslide in American history when he defeated Barry Goldwater, found himself weighted down by the war in Vietnam. So on March 31, 1968, he scheduled an Oval Office address about the war. After speaking for 40 minutes, President Johnson then stunned even his closest associates by reading a statement that had not been included in the printed text and which he'd written himself. The president said that there was, quote, division in the American House. And he said he was withdrawing from the race in the name of national unity, which he said was, quote, the ultimate strength of our country.
I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Imagine if President Biden decided likewise and said so now. Some will no doubt argue that he'd make himself a lame duck. But I would say in this divided environment, that's a relative expression. The filibuster precludes any legislative achievement now, and certainly even more so after the midterms. I don't think he'd be sacrificing any real power that he holds today. In fact, he might just strengthen his hand. The president has told us that he ran for office after Charlottesville, calling it a battle for the soul of the nation. He ran in a bid to stop Donald Trump from a second consecutive term, and he succeeded. He can announce with his head held high that the totality of calamity faced by the nation demands that his every waking moment applies to those problems, and he doesn't think it appropriate for him to divert his attention to his own re-election. Think about the alternative. The alternative is to be the face of the shellacking Democrats will likely take in November, and then he'll have to endure pressure within his own party to reevaluate his future plans. Maybe better to do it on his terms, more immediately. I want to know what you think. Go to my website at smerconish.com and vote on this week's survey question. Should Joe Biden announce now that he's not running for re-election? Joining me now is Amy Parnes, senior correspondent for The Hill, co-author with Jonathan Allen of Lucky, How Joe Biden Barely Won the Presidency. Amy, welcome back. Your piece in The Hill inspired my thought process. You've been sitting there like everybody else listening. What do you think of what I just said?
I happen to agree with a lot of it, but it's more importantly, I think a lot of Washington is kind of wondering, and that's why we penned this piece, kind of wondering why everyone is asking me, even outside of Washington, do you think the president will run again? He's going to be in his 80s. Is that really appropriate? Will the country be in okay terms? And so I think this is the big question that's haunting people right now. And the big thing is he wants to run for president. People close to him have told me that. He's told former President Obama he wants to run. It's serious. He thinks he is the only person who can beat Donald Trump or Governor DeSantis in 2024. And that is the big, that's what he is thinking about right now.
Okay, you reference former President Trump, who is sitting on about $100 million in campaign cash. Has President Biden undertaken any steps, apart from telling President Obama or telling the public, I'm going to run? Is he doing the sort of things that a candidate at 2 years out needs to be doing?
He is, I think he's basically frozen the Democratic establishment right now because everyone is waiting on him to decide whether or not he's running because people assume that he is. And they look at Kamala Harris, the vice president, and they say, she's not quite ready yet. She's not quite ready for prime time. There were really big expectations for her coming in and she hasn't really met them. And they're looking at the Democratic field and saying, well, who else? Pete Buttigieg, maybe someone else. But a lot of people think that the Democratic Party bench is very weak right now. And so it might be buying a little bit of time for other people to kind of come to the fold. But I think a lot of people look to the president as someone who is the only person who can do this again. He did it the first time. A lot of people said, okay, all these doubters thought that he couldn't beat Donald Trump the first time. And look, he did it. And he can do it again.
I'm anticipating critics who will say to me, why would he possibly surrender his power? But you heard my explanation. I don't see him doing as such. In fact, I think there's an argument that he actually enhances his standing. You remember maybe in the 80s, let Reagan be Reagan. Imagine Joe Biden can be the authentic Joe Biden, doesn't have to worry about the squad, doesn't have to worry about Bernie. He can be the more centrist D that many of us continue to believe he is.
And a lot of people agree with you, Michael. I mean, he has been a little bit hindered. He has been a little bit held back. He hasn't been able to be himself in the presidency. His aides have kind of kept him shackled, for lack of a better term, because they don't think that he can say the things he wants to say without putting his foot in his mouth. And so I think all of this, I think you have a point, and a lot of people agree with you. But who can actually win in 2024? That is the bigger question.
Right, but he's going to get sucked into that as soon as the midterms are over, and that's when I think he'll be facing pressure like I'm discussing. So, well, you've heard my pitch. Get out in front of it now. I find your assessment of what happens vis-a-vis Kamala Harris to be interesting, and I'm recommending that everybody read your piece. I'll put it in my social media again. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts? Tweet me at Smerconish. Go to my Facebook page. I will read some responses throughout the course of the program. What do we have, Catherine? Smerconish doesn't even pretend to be independent. He is hostile to Joe Biden. Blue Bay Crab, to the contrary. Did you not hear me say I'm coming at this with his best interest and that of the nation at heart? You heard me say, I hope, that I wish good things for the president, for his health. I regard him as a patriot. I think that he is a decent and honorable man. Did you not hear me say every one of those things? And so because I'm willing to address the subject that is the elephant in the room, you think that I'm here to cheap shot him? To the contrary. But I want to hear from everybody else by going to my website at smerconish.com and answering this week's survey question. Should Joe Biden announce now that he's not running for re-election? Up ahead, in the wake of the tragic Buffalo mass shooting, we've been hearing a lot about great replacement theory. Some people want social media to ban the topic altogether. Is that desirable? Is it even possible? Plus, in 2021, fentanyl killed nearly 500 San Franciscans, and yet not a single fentanyl dealer was convicted by DA Chesaboudin. Why not? And will it cost him his job in the recall election on June 7th? Should social media clamp down on the spread of conspiracies like the Great Replacement Theory? That question arose again in the wake of last weekend's mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, because of a 180-page screed posted by the gunman before the shooting that referred to that dogma several times. In short, it's the claim that there's a nefarious effort to replace white Americans with non-white immigrants for electoral gain to achieve a political agenda. The Buffalo shooter plagiarized some of his manifesto from the shooter who live-streamed his killings of 51 in a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019. The same theory has been cited as justification by several other mass shooters, including the 2019 Walmart incident in El Paso, Texas that killed 23, the 2018 Pittsburgh's Tree of Life synagogue shooting that killed 11, the 2015 shooting at a Charleston, South Carolina church that killed 9, the 2019 killing of a congregant in Poway, California in a synagogue. It's not just deranged gunmen who believe the theory. You'll also recall one of the rallying cries in the white supremacist march in Charlottesville, 2017. Roll that audio.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
And according to a recent AP NORC poll, when presented with the statement, there is a group of people in this country who are trying to replace native-born Americans with immigrants who agree with their political views, 32% of Americans agreed. On most of the big social platforms, hate speech that's directed at a specific group and related threats of violence are viewed as a violation of terms and service. This week, the Washington Post reported that the Buffalo shooter set up a chat room on a social media platform before he live streamed, and that 15 people had joined when the shooting began. A new Texas law calls into question if platforms can moderate content at all. As CNN reports, in the name of free speech, House Bill 20 prohibits social media companies from blocking, banning, or demoting user posts or accounts, and enables Texans to sue the platforms if they believe they've been silenced. A federal appeals court allowed the law to take effect last week, so now it might be up to the Supreme Court as to whether the law violates tech platforms' First Amendment rights. Is it desirable? Is it possible to scrub the, quote, replacement theory from social media? Joining me now is Courtney Radge, a fellow at the UCLA Institute for Technology, Law, and Policy. Dr. Radge, thank you for being here. We refer to the First Amendment, but it's really not a First Amendment issue per se, right? These are private platforms. They can establish their own rules.
That's right. So actually, platforms have their own First Amendment rights, and they have the right to decide what they want to allow to be said as well as what they don't want to be allowed said on their platforms.
So what sort of things traditionally are banned from the better-known social media platforms as of now?
So there has been a convergence around kind of the community standards or terms of service of the major social media platforms where they prohibit graphic violence, the promotion of terrorism or violent extremism, hate speech, in some cases racist speech, sexual or nudity. So there is this convergence around that, but I think one of the problems is we're talking about a lot of this being done on alternative media platforms, and of course you can't undercut the role that the mainstream media plays in all of this.
Well, and isn't some of it rather subjective? I mean, of course, we all remember in the 11th hour of the campaign that the dissemination of information about Hunter's laptop was squelched. That was quote unquote disinformation, but it really wasn't disinformation. Couldn't you see the same arguments being made in this case?
I think it's a little bit different. That was a very particular news story. It was a political, during an election. I think that was a problematic intervention from the platforms. But I think what we're talking about more broadly is, can a social media platform ban discussion of an ideology? And I think that there are different gradations of how platforms can deal with discussion. No, they should not ban discussions. However, they don't have to promote the accounts. They can prohibit the glorification of this theory, the promotion of this theory. They've done that with jihadist terrorism. They've done that with Holocaust denial. So they could add this in, but they're not going to be able to ban discussion of it because fundamentally there are political issues there, and you have politicians themselves who are speaking about this every day.
Well, not just politicians, but some of the mouthpieces, you know who I'm talking about, that politicians follow. I mean, it'd be kind of odd, wouldn't it, that you could go to a particular cable outlet and hear these views espoused in prime time, but you couldn't go on Facebook or TikTok or Twitter and see the same viewpoint.
It would be odd. That said, Fox News has its own agenda. CNN has its own, approach. I mean, luckily, I think a lot of mainstream media is trying to do good journalism. They want to do fact-check journalism. The social media platforms can decide that they're not going to amplify and feed fuel to this fire. They can make it harder to find these videos, these manifestos. They can't make it impossible because 4chan is not part of this collaboration. You do see, for example, Twitch reacted against the video right away. So there are these platforms for collaboration, but we should also be concerned if we hear about the discussions to ban discussion of a theory. We've already seen that tried in legislation to ban discussion of critical race theory in classrooms. We shouldn't be seeing bans of theories. We need to see bans of promotion and demotion of accounts and content that promotes really vile genocidal ideologies.
And Dr. Raj, I would simply add, I don't want to drive these folks underground. I'd rather deal with them and confront them. You get the final word, but you have to make it quick.
Well, I don't know that driving them underground just because they're not allowed to propel their Facebook, and Twitter accounts into the mainstream is that they're going to go underground. There's still plenty of ways for them to connect. So I think we should try to get them out of the mainstream.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your expertise.
Thank you. My pleasure, Michael.
What are you saying via social media? My Smerconish Twitter, Facebook, YouTube pages. What do we have? Always with the communist playbook, censorship. Christopher James, it's a tough problem to confront because we don't want lies and hate speech circulated among us. By the same token, though, sometimes you give strength to so-called movements when you do ban it. You heard me say to my guest, Dr. Raj, I'd rather confront these people and prove them to be wrong. But it's a tough area to police. I mean, I happen to believe that immigration policy impacts electoral politics. How could it not? But by the same token, I don't think there's a cabal among us where people are setting policy because they want to turn the country blue in red states. So would I be able to say that if all of a sudden that sort of speech were censored? I hope I'd be able to. I want to remind you, go to my website at smerconish.com. People are pretty hot about me even asking the question. I hope you heard my opening commentary where I explained it. Should Joe Biden announce now that he's not running for re-election? Up ahead, one big reason for San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin facing a recall election in the middle of his city's surging fentanyl crisis that last year killed nearly 500 people. His office reportedly did not secure a single conviction for dealing the drug. How come? We'll discuss. And a different way of looking at America's current reality show obsession, the dueling Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation lawsuits. Beyond all the nasty things that are being said, what does their body language tell us about their testimony? Voters in San Francisco will decide just weeks from now whether to recall the man who was arguably the country's best-known progressive prosecutor. San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin is fending off accusations that he's been too soft on crime as rising rates of burglaries, homicides, and drug dealing continue to plague the city since he took office in 2020. The recall is set for June 7. It's being watched all across the country. Boudin is the highest profile of this new breed of progressive prosecutor, and the effort has a good chance of succeeding. A new poll by EMC Research shows nearly 7 in 10 city residents would vote for his recall. And now an interesting new analysis of court documents by the San Francisco Standard could worsen an already tough situation for the beleaguered DA. The lead of their report reads as follows, quote, despite a surging fentanyl crisis that killed nearly 500 people last year in San Francisco, the office of District Attorney Chesa Boudin did not secure a single conviction for dealing the deadly opioid for cases filed during 2021, according to a review of court data. Instead, the Standard says that Boudin's office has opted to hit defendants with the lesser accessory after the fact charge. The explanation for this? Immigration policy. Because most drug dealers arrested in San Francisco are undocumented, the Standard says, quote, prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys point out that drug dealing convictions are grounds for deportation. And a substantial number of drug dealers in the city are Honduran nationals who could face deadly consequences if deported. The accessory charge still gives them and their families a path toward eventual citizenship. Honest to God, it's like I'm reading from The Onion. California state law does require prosecutors to take immigration status as a consideration when asking for conviction. But Boudin has expanded this process aggressively. The San Francisco District Attorney's Office said in a statement to CNN that the premise of the Standard's story was false. Here's what they said. District Attorney Boudin has achieved hundreds of drug convictions, including fentanyl cases. The article is focused on what kind of conviction is achieved, which is highly misleading. The DA has a high conviction rate for drug crimes and is complying with California law that requires prosecutors to consider immigration consequences in plea negotiations. Here to discuss is the author of the new book entitled San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities. Michael Schellenberger joins me now. He's an author, environmentalist, and right now is an independent running to be California Governor Gavin Newsom's opponent. So, Michael, homelessness, the label that we affix to many of the fentanyl addicted in San Francisco and elsewhere in the country, you think that there's a semantic issue here of importance that sets policy. What am I making reference to?
Good to be with you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be back on CNN. Yeah, I think that when we refer to homelessness, what most people are describing are the open-air drug markets, or what Europeans call open drug scenes, where people who are in such late-stage addiction actually end up living in the open-air drug markets right near the dealers. And then with that comes the shoplifting that addicts are often doing in order to support their habit, the sex work, a huge amount of sexual assault I've documented and others have documented among folks living on the street. And so there's really only one thing all civilized societies must do, which is you must shut down the open-air drug market. That requires prosecuting the dealers. That requires getting addicts into drug treatment programs. This is what Europe did in the late 1980s and 1990s. It requires the coordination of police and social workers. And in California, the situation is so out of control, it actually is going to require the governor to be involved, the mayors to be involved, and maybe even the National Guard in order to long-term suppress this open-air drug dealing.
In other words, I read your book, and what I took away, among other things, is that when you cast this as homelessness, it's thought of in a shelter context, when in fact it's drug addiction and it's mental health that is driving the equation. You cited a study by a UCLA sociologist who looked at a treatment approach on Skid Row in Los Angeles and one in Malibu. What am I making reference to?
Well, it's very interesting because, of course, these very expensive drug rehab programs for wealthy celebrities, they actually use tough love. They're people that pay $50,000 a month for rehab are getting very strict, discipline-oriented rehab to get into recovery. What we find for poor people, low-income people, people who are using public services it's a much more hands-off attitude. It's far too laissez-faire. People don't get the recovery they need. You know, we've dealt with addiction for at least 150 years, since after the Civil War, when many people became addicted to morphine. We know that when friends and family are no longer able to make an intervention with their loved ones who are suffering from addiction, people often break laws, they become the responsibility of societies. Some amount of coercion is required for some people to get into recovery. That's what Europe has discovered, that's what Japan has discovered. We have just gone too far in one direction in California, which is this hands-off approach, and it's really destroyed, obviously thousands of people are dying, but also Michael, it's really destroyed the fabric of the city.
Michael, quickly, should immigration status be something that holds back, via state law or a decision by a prosecutor, how you're going to treat a drug dealer? Take 30 seconds and address what I referenced in your introduction.
Absolutely not. We have the sanctuary law, which is supposed to be for refugees from Central America, Latin America. It's an important protection of refugees, but it's being grossly abused by the district attorney, by other politicians in California. They're letting violent and dangerous drug dealers who are killing our citizens off the hook by abusing that sanctuary law. As governor of California, I'll put an end to that. We're going to shut down the open-air drug scenes, the open-air drug markets, and get people the help that they need, that they deserve.
I mean, it seems to me that if I'm a prosecutor, my consideration might be, and I don't wish for bad things to happen to anybody, but maybe if this guy gets sent back to Honduras and something bad happens to him, the word then comes back to San Francisco and no more of the Honduran migrants deal drugs, because they don't want to be like that guy. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Checking in on your tweets and Facebook comments and YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. What do we have? How about we make drugs legal and focus on rehabilitation? Carl White. Carl White, 20 years ago, if you said that to me, I'd have scoffed and said, how ridiculous. All of a sudden, we're going to open up drug addiction to all of society, where at least right now it's relegated to a small few. But I'm no longer scoffing. I think we should absolutely give serious consideration to exactly that. And I think that Schellenberger is also onto something when he says casting this as a homeless issue really doesn't address what's driving it. With a Philadelphia city councilman, I'll give him a shout out, Alan Dom is his name. 3 weeks ago, I was in the Kensington section of our city right here, K&A, the infamous, Walmart of open air drugs. It's not a homeless issue, it's a drug issue. It's so damn sad. And to think that as the crow flies, a quarter mile away, a half a mile away, you have new millennials and Gen Xers who are eating at shishi restaurants, and we're like oblivious to this. How the hell did we let it happen in the United States? Anyway, I want to remind you, answer the survey question at smerconish.com. Should Joe Biden announce now that he's not running for re-election? Still to come, so many opinions are flying around about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation showdown in a Virginia courtroom. But apart from what they are saying in their testimony, what about their body language? I'm about to ask an expert. What might we be able to read from the body language of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in the courtroom of their defamation case? In this week's installment of the world's current top reality show, jurors heard testimony from former Depp friends and associates who described strain on their relationship with the actor and his alleged substance abuse as it increased. You likely already know that Depp has sued Heard for $50 million, alleging that a 2018 op-ed she wrote in the Washington Post about being a survivor of abuse defamed him, though it did not mention him by name. Heard then countersued Depp for $100 million, saying statements that his attorney made calling her abuse claims a hoax were themselves defamatory. Joining me now is Janine Driver. She's a body language expert, president of the Body Language Institute, author of the book, You Can't Lie to Me. Janine, I can't get enough of you on Court TV. That is why you are here. Before you offer any opinion, give my audience 30 seconds as to what qualifies you to read body language.
A little shy of 2 decades with federal law enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. My dad said I'm his daughter who turned her hobbies into a career, drinking, smoking, and shooting. But sincerely, my specialty is firearms trafficking. I interviewed thousands of people. I've trained agents from the CIA, from the FBI, from the Scotland Yard Police. I have trained clandestine spies. And today I help companies reduce hiring mistakes, HR events, by 89%. And I help companies and train sales teams from Coca-Cola, Booz Allen Hamilton, Lockheed Martin, Abbott, ADP, Kronos. The list goes on and on. So that's
all right,
what
I accept your credentials. Let's go to the tape. I'm a trial lawyer. 10 years of trying cases. I never hugged any of my clients in a courtroom like this. What is going on with Johnny Depp and his lawyer?
You know, Michael, a lot of people think they're hooking up, but I trained at the Federal Law Enforcement Center in Georgia. We call it FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And if you saw flirting like this on week 1 and it stopped week 2, you knew they were hooking up. If, in fact, there was a relationship here, this would not be happening. This would be in clandestine mode. I think this is to get Amber's goat. And at the end of the day, he has this rapport with everyone, even Ben Chu. They're all touching and hugging him. They have great rapport together. And it could be strategic to say, listen, this beautiful young woman voted as one of the top lawyers to watch this year and last year in the country of the United States of America is touching him, patting him, looking at him, adoring him, that if she likes him and she's smart and beautiful, maybe he's not that bad.
Right. In other words, is it for the jurors to think, hey, he's a good guy. Look at the relationship that he has with his own lawyer.
I think it is a genuine relationship where they like each other respectfully. You know, she has a boyfriend evidently out of the UK. Johnny even told one of the people in the courtroom they're just an attorney-client that get along really well. I think, yeah, they kick it up a notch to have the jury. But I've got to tell you, I was in the courtroom. Okay. This jury's a little disengaged, in my opinion, most of them.
Disengaged? How could you be disengaged? I'm at home watching all that my schedule allows. All right, something else. Of course, it comes down, it's a he said, she said. Who do you believe? I want to show Amber Heard's emotional testimony. For this, I want the audio and video, so let's listen and watch.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
This is fake. This is bad acting. And I do believe her, though. I think she's telling the truth when she says she doesn't want to do this. She doesn't want to do it because even her acting coach said she's bad at fake crying. She's not good at acting it out. When we cry, and it's authentic, Michael, our eyes have things called tears. Our nose runs. She breathes in instead of breathing out, and we don't see these deep swallows. This is really bad acting. And sadness comes at a slow roll. We saw Johnny get sad. We saw his artist friend get sad in the courtroom. This is fake sadness. Her inner eyebrows aren't pulled together and up. Bad. This is bad acting.
Okay, let me show third clip, if we can, quickly. Johnny Depp, while she's testifying, he won't even look at her. What's going on with this?
A lot of people think that, you know, what is this? Is this some strategy? Maybe it is. In the courtroom, Amber's lawyer said it's because, or Amber said herself, it's because he knows he's guilty. I don't think that's the case. I myself am a battered woman survivor. I've talked with battered women survivors. Most battered women won't look at the abuser in the courtroom. Every now and then it might happen. And we do see Johnny look up every once in a while. And Johnny's lawyer said it's because he said, I'll never look at you. You'll never look at me in the eyes ever again.
Here's my prediction, Janine. The jury concludes they deserve each other. Your thought?
I think this case is nuttier than a Snickers bar, Michael. It is crazy, and I love every second of it.
Janine, thank you for being here. I sadly agree with you.
Thanks,
Checking
Michael.
in on more of your tweets and Facebook comments from the world of Twitter, I think. What do we have? Amber's doing a lot of acting. There was a piece written this week that said, like, the whole thing is just a giant hookup. Honest to God, it's like a Tinder. You know what? I shouldn't even expand on my theory. It wasn't my original theory, by the way, but you couldn't make it up. Best I end the segment. Still to come. More of your best and worst tweets and Facebook comments. We'll give you the final result of the survey question. When you go to smirconish.com, make sure you register for the daily newsletter and answer this question. Should Joe Biden announce now that he is not running for re-election? I just put this in my Twitter feed, @Smirkanish. I was making reference to it at the end of the last segment. Eleanor Harmsworth wrote for The Spectator about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. Among other things, quote, "At certain points, it almost seems as if one of the two catches the other's eye for a moment whilst giving testimony, and you, the viewer, can sense a bat's squeak of sexuality that appears to be imperceptible to the court." I concur. Time now to see how you responded to the survey question at smirkanish.com. Should Joe Biden announce now that he is not running for re-election? Survey says, wow. Let me tell you what surprises me about this. A lot of votes, 21,438. The closeness of the margin, because I fully expected that with a CNN audience offering my perspective that I would be in a distinct minority. But that's not the case. Pretty close result. Continue to vote and subscribe to the newsletter when you get there. What came in from social media? Let's take a quick look. Smirkanish, Trump first. Biden should not announce his future. Yeah, let Trump say he's not running, and then Biden can announce that he won't either. I don't know what Trump's going to do, but he's sitting on a lot of money, and if Joe Biden is serious about running, you'd think he'd be raising funds already. Another from social media. What do we have, Catherine? Last week I observed, if it's the contest of the visual, the nun-looking wife came off looking much better than the Johnny man bun. What's amazing to me, and this is all anecdotal, but based on conversation with my SiriusXM radio audience and people in my orbit, is the way that women seem suspicious of her and accepting him. I said to Janine Driver, my guest, my hunch is that the jury thinks they deserve each other, has had enough of both of them, and I'd be shocked if he were successful in this case. But who the hell knows? You just couldn't make it up. Thank you for watching. Continue to follow me on social media. Vote on the survey question if you didn't already, and I'll see you next week.
Good morning to you. It is Saturday, May 21st. I'm Amara Walker.
Great to be with you, Amara. I'm Boris Sanchez. You are live in the CNN newsroom. And we begin this Saturday with new developments in the nationwide frenzy for baby formula and the efforts to ease a severe shortage. This is brand new video into CNN of the first batch of formula the Biden administration has secured from Europe. U.S. troops packed it up for a flight to the United States using a military plane to transport formula. Just one of the latest and extreme and unusual measures by the White House in response to this crisis, which critics say the U.S. government should have seen coming much sooner. The FDA is coming under fire for the 4-month lag after a whistleblower complained of problems at a plant of formula maker Abbott.
Yeah, those are some extraordinary images. The shutdown of that facility exacerbated the shortage. And just this morning, while in Asia, President Biden signed a new bill into law to help deal with the lack of supply. Last week, 45% of formula products nationwide were out of stock, nearly half. The new law allows a waiver of some requirements in federal nutrition program to help expand access to formula. CNN's senior medical correspondent Elizabeth Cohen is at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, tracking the formula supply headed to the U.S. Hi there, Elizabeth. I'm asking the questions, to parents, what they want to know. When is the formula going to be reaching the U.S.?
The formula will be reaching the U.S. tomorrow. It is being flown to Indiana. What you're seeing is what will end up in Indiana. 14 of these huge pallets will be loaded up on a plane and flown out tomorrow. Now, here at Ramstein, they fly things and people all the time. That's what they do. But talking to the staff here, they actually were kind of emotional about it. They said this time we're flying in, really liquid gold to help babies, to help save babies in the United States. So let's take a look at what this is. It's Nestle Alfamino. This is a product for babies who have allergies. It really can be drunk by other babies as well, but it's hypoallergenic formulas are really needed in the United States right now. Now, Nestle, of course, is a familiar name in the United States, but really you don't find imported formula very much in the United States. There's a reason for that. We were always able to take care of our own. We didn't need to, be saved by other countries. But, well, that's unfortunately what the situation is right now. So this is 1.5 million 8-ounce bottles. That's a lot, no question about it. It's going to be an airplane full of formula. But just to sort of keep things in perspective, there are millions of babies under the age of 1 in the United States. So 1.5 million 8-ounce bottles is a great thing, but it is not going to change this situation. It's not going to all of a sudden make formula plentiful in the U.S. There are lots of things that are being done. For example, the second largest maker of formula, the Enfamil products, they've ratcheted up their production by 35%, but still we have this shortage. It's probably going to be many weeks until parents see full shelves again. Boris, Amara?
Yeah, many weeks until they see full shelves, as you say. It's something, but obviously not enough at this moment. Elizabeth Cohen, thank you so much. And let's go now to CNN's Polo Sandoval. He's talked to one couple struggling to feed their baby.
Yeah, Polo, their infant struggles from an allergy right now. Go ahead.
It is, because the thing about when you hear these stories, Boris, and when you hear from these families, it really adds more perspective when you see just that liquid gold that is on its way to the United States, and so many families that are waiting to see how much of an impact that will have and just how soon. We're talking Adriana and Justin Eith here in Long Island, New York. We spent some time with them yesterday, heard their story. Like so many parents, they have really been just scrambling to try to find baby powdered formula. However, there's yet another layer of complication for this couple because little Cooper, their baby who just turned 4 months yesterday, he has certain dietary restrictions, not only because he has digestive issues, but also a dairy allergy. So after multiple tries, trying about 5 different formulas, they finally found the one that works for this baby, Pyramino, which not only happens to be hypoallergenic, but also is extremely hard to find. And that's why this couple has been really turning to family and friends from New York to California to try to track down this specific formula that's only available at most pharmacies here. And checking with those pharmacies, they're told that they still have not been able to stock up. So far, Mom telling me yesterday that they've been able to secure at least 2 weeks worth. But the question is, with the FDA announcing that it's going to be several weeks before we finally begin to see shelves stocking up, and the question is, how will they be able to stock up long term for baby Cooper and also other babies as well?
And I don't sit here, wanting to make it seem that my son has a greater need, because I believe every baby has need. Every baby needs to be fed. But it is scary when there is a medical need. And even past my son, because there are kids with greater health issues. How do they eat?
And yesterday, some pretty positive news for couples like the Ides. Pure Amino, the manufacturer of it, the company actually announced that they have been able to sustain about a 35% increase in production since its competitor, Abbott Nutrition, announced their recall. They've also been able to announce unlimited overtime for employees to be able to produce this formula. But ultimately, though, Boris and Amber, the big question is just when will we see those positive impacts? But of course, a tip of the hat to Elizabeth Cohen for that bit of reporting from Reckitt, which is the manufacturer of Cooper's formula. This is the kind of news that more parents want to hear. But again, they're holding their breath, they're hopeful, but they're still a bit skeptical about when they will see that positive impact at their grocery stores or their pharmacies.
Yeah, several weeks is a long time for many parents to wait who are just filled with anxiety right now. Paula Sandoval, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Let's bring in Democratic Congresswoman Kim Schrier from Washington State. She's the first pediatrician elected to Congress, and earlier this week, Congresswoman Schrier and some of her colleagues sent a letter to the FDA demanding action and answers on this baby formula shortage. Congresswoman, we're grateful that you're sharing part of your weekend with us. I want you to listen to what the parents of a premature baby who are struggling to find the right formula for her told me this morning. Listen to this.
As the parents of premature kids, who are dependent on this product, we were not warned in any way proactively by the manufacturer, by anyone who was in a position to know, and that a critical shortage was coming. This absolutely blindsided us. So, when did they know, and why weren't we warned of this shortage? Because it has put a lot of families in a really devastating position.
Congresswoman, there were signs that a shortage was coming. Why weren't parents warned? Who should be held accountable for that?
Well, Boris, I have exactly the same questions. Why is it that we have an early warning system when medications are running low, but we don't have that for specialty formulas or regular formulas for infants? Because it's not really just food. Newborns, preemies, they don't have any other options. And so we're having an oversight hearing this week in my subcommittee to answer exactly those questions. Why such a sluggish response so many months late when they knew that there would be a dramatic drop in production?
Congresswoman, as a pediatrician, what's your advice to parents like Emily and Mac, who we just heard from?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And I think the advice for them would be to talk with their doctor. But I think there's broader advice for families out there, because I think all parents of children up to 1 who rely on formula are really worried right now. And this is most important for the children who are under 6 months. And even those who are breastfeeding, most of them rely on formula to some degree. And so here's what I would ask, that if you have a child who is 6 months or up, try to get more of their nutrition from food. You can blend anything up. You can get lots of nutrients that way. They can be less reliant on formula. And the American Academy of Pediatrics says go ahead temporarily and use cow milk. That will free up more formula for the infants under 6 months old who really don't have any other choice. And in the meantime, shipping this formula from overseas will fill in those gaps. But we're the United States of America, and this should not be happening.
It's fascinating to see shelves empty here in the United States while they're full in Mexico and Canada. I'm wondering what else you think needs to be done to prevent something like this from happening again.
That's right. I visited my local grocery store and saw empty shelves for many of the formulas. And to make sure this doesn't happen again, I referred to an early warning system. we need to have some formula in our strategic national stockpile. That just makes sense. Imagine what would happen in a national emergency without that formula. And the other thing is having that early warning system so that if something like this happens, like in Sturgis, Michigan, I mean, remember, 40% of Similac formula was made in that one factory. 98% of formula is made right here in the United States. We need to have Enfamil, for example, who's stepping up now. The FDA should have encouraged that. The administration should have encouraged that back in February when this recall happened.
So I do want to pivot for a moment because the House just passed a bill that you co-sponsored. It would allow the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, to investigate energy companies for alleged price gouging. But there are critics, including some Democrats, who worry that the move could actually further reduce the gas supply at a critical time. What's your response to that criticism?
Look, I'm hearing from constituents all over my district that these gas prices are killing them. I have a big rural area. People drive long distances. They drive in trucks, and this is really devastating for them. And there are not that many things that we can do to crack down. Because let me remind you that these prices are increasing even as the cost of a barrel of gas is decreasing. They are increasing far more than would be expected simply from cutting out Russian gas, which was only 8% of our supply. But prices are up just in the last couple of months, 20%. So, we need answers. We need to crack down when they are making record profits, like higher than at any point almost in a decade at a time when Americans are hurting. The FTC needs power.
Congresswoman Kim Schreier, we appreciate the conversation. We have to leave it there. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Boris.
Of course. So right now, President Biden is meeting with the president of South Korea against a backdrop of nuclear tensions with North Korea.
Mr. Biden and South Korean leader Yoon Suk-yeol say they agreed to expand joint military exercises as a deterrent to North Korea. This is President Biden's first visit to Asia since taking office, and the trip is an effort to shore up these key alliances and strengthen economic ties.
Let's take you now to Seoul and CNN Chief White House correspondent Caitlin Collins, who's traveling with the president. Caitlin, what's the significance of this decision to expand the joint military drills between the United States and South Korea? It's not something that happened during the Trump administration.
No, it's basically a complete reversal of what actually happened during the Trump administration when they brought these joint exercises between the United States and South Korea to a pause, because that was an effort that President Trump made to try to get Kim Jong-un to the negotiating table. Obviously, he had 2 summits with him. They did not materialize in anything when it comes to denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which was the ultimate goal of those summits. And so you're seeing President Biden take a very different turn here, a very different method that he is pursuing when it comes to South Korea. And so they said not only are they continuing those joint exercises between the 2 militaries, they are looking at expanding the scope of them. That is obviously not something Kim Jong-un wants to see. It is something he has complained about many times before, saying that it's a provocation. And so that is really going to be a focus of the relationship here. And when you look at the larger picture of it, of what President Biden is trying to do here, is trying to really revitalize this relationship with South Korea. That is why he came here first on his first stop, on his first trip to Asia since taking office. Obviously something that was delayed because of COVID-19, but he is also trying to project a larger message while here about what he believes is ultimately going to be successful when it comes to democracies versus autocracies.
But I really do think we're at an inflection point in world history. Things are changing so rapidly. I think you're seeing that what you're going to see more of. This is going to be a competition between democracies and autocracies. And I mean that sincerely. And unfortunately, I think I'm being proven to be correct, not just here, but around the world.
Obviously, that statement there at the end from President Biden, a clear reference to what is happening in Ukraine with President Putin. He talked about the invasion several times, and the White House and officials have talked about the fact that that could be a lesson. There's a concern that that could be something that you could see happen here in Asia when, of course, it comes to Taiwan and China. That is a massive concern for this White House and for officials here in the region. And so that'll be part of this effort of President Biden's trip when he wraps up here in South Korea and then goes on to Tokyo, Boris.
All right, Caitlin Collins, appreciate your reporting there. Thank you so much. And still to come this morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vowing to end Russia's bloody war through democracy. But just how long will that take? We're going to go live to Lviv with the latest. Plus, 2 people are dead after a powerful tornado ripped through a city in Michigan. The emergency situation in Gaylord is just ahead.
This morning, President Biden signing a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine on the sidelines of his trip to Asia. This comes as Ukraine's president marks his 3-year anniversary in office. Volodymyr Zelensky predicting that after bloody battles, the war will end with diplomacy. But as the war rages on, Russia is now claiming complete control of a symbol of the resistance and a last holdout for Ukrainian forces.
CNN national correspondent Suzanne Malveaux joining us now live from Lviv, Ukraine. Hi there, Suzanne. What more are you hearing from President Zelensky and from the battered steel plant there in Mariupol?
President Zelensky is trying to give some hope to the Ukrainian people. As you can imagine, they are tired of the fight, of the battle ahead, but there will be additional battles. But with the fall of Mariupol and those who evacuated the steel plant really does turn the tide here and suggests that the focus will now be to the east of the country. Those inside the steel plant, the Ukrainian military, the Russians say about 530 or so came out yesterday, the last of the group to evacuate. CNN has not been able to independently confirm those numbers, but the families of those evacuated very concerned, very worried about their loved ones. One of the wives of those soldiers saying that her husband left one hell to go to another hell. This is because they are in Russia's hands, whether or not they are deeply, severely wounded in the hospital controlled by the Russians, or if they're at the detention center also controlled by the Russians. They don't know just what will happen next. Russian officials say that they will be treated in accordance with international law, but at the same time have also said that, yes, they will be interrogated and some potentially tried for war crimes. Now, President Zelensky today in an interview with Ukrainian television really trying to bolster his people and acknowledge that, yes, there is more fight to come.
The victory will be extremely difficult too. It will be a bloody victory in the battle. However, the end will definitely be in diplomacy. I'm convinced because there are some things which we would not be able to end without a negotiation table. Because we want to take back everything, but the Russian Federation doesn't want to return anything.
In Kharkiv, that is where a cultural center was blown up, was destroyed. The president again calling it absolute evil, absolute stupidity, part of an effort he believes to erase the Ukrainian culture as well as the people.
Yeah, the atrocities and suffering continue. Suzanne Malveaux, thank you. Well, the vote count continues in a high-stakes GOP primary race between TV personality Dr. Mehmet Oz and former hedge fund CEO David McCormick. We're live in Pennsylvania with what's at stake as another battle brews further south in Georgia.
Former President Trump's midterm political endorsements are facing a major test in the battleground states of Pennsylvania and Georgia. In Pennsylvania's Republican Senate primary, the race still too close to call, with celebrity doctor Mehmet Oz, who Trump endorsed, holding on to a narrow lead, about 1,070 votes, against former hedge fund manager David McCormick.
And Georgia's GOP primary will take center stage next week with a highly anticipated matchup between Governor Brian Kemp and Trump's favorite, former Senator David Perdue. Here's CNN's Melanie Zonona and Eva McKend. Let's talk about Pennsylvania first, Melanie. This race there is likely headed for a recount, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This race is neck and neck. Mehmet Oz continues to hold a very narrow lead over David McCormick. It's the difference of just 1,000 votes. And there are only a small number of votes left to be counted. Canvassing is going to continue over the next few days. We do not expect many new vote totals to trickle in over the weekend, but we should know next week whether this is indeed heading to a recount, which would be automatically triggered if the race is within half a percentage point. Now, both campaigns are already gearing up for that potentially bruising and drawn out scenario. They are adding lawyers and experts who have experience with recounts, but both teams are also eager to put the primary behind them. They want to pivot to the general election and start attacking the Democratic nominee, John Fetterman. And it's worth reminding viewers at home how much is at stake in this race, because whoever wins in November could determine control of the United States Senate. And there's also a lot on the line for Donald Trump as well. He decided to get in this race. He endorsed Dr. Oz. It was not enough to give him a decisive victory here. And so Trump, like many in the GOP, are eagerly watching to see who ultimately prevails in this Senate primary.
The former president also has some skin in the game in the Peach State. Let's get over to Eva McKend. Eva, this is the final weekend before primary day on Tuesday. I'm wondering what you're hearing from voters there.
Well, Boris, we were at a voting site in Atlanta yesterday on the last day of early voting, a heavily Democratic area. So mostly Democratic voters. And the top of the ticket, Stacey Abrams running for governor. She's running uncontested. So there is not as much action there. But still voters, they tell us they are paying attention. Now, according to the Secretary of State's office, Georgia voters are turning out in record numbers during the early vote period. More than 700,000 people, more than 400,000 Republicans, about 300,000 Democrats. Again, not as much action on the Democratic side, but still Democratic voters are turning out. Take a listen.
I don't think people are interested in being bystanders anymore. Like, I want my vote to count, and I'm going to show up and annoy every family member and friend and make sure they do the same.
Meanwhile, incumbent Governor Brian Kemp running against David Perdue. Governor Kemp favored to do well on Tuesday. Though former President Donald Trump endorsed Perdue, Kemp seems to be really holding on to the momentum. And that essentially is because he is in the job already. For instance, he's holding events, a big announcement this week about economic development. That is not officially a campaign event, but it might as well be. And so Perdue has had some challenges in gaining ground, but still a few days left for both to continue to make their case to voters. Boris?
All right, I'll take it. Thanks so much, Eva McKend and Melanie Zonona. So let's talk more about Georgia and what's going to happen on Tuesday. Here with me to discuss this further is Tia Mitchell. She is the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tia, thanks so much for coming in early. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So as we're saying, I mean, the GOP primary here in Georgia is going to be a very high stakes race, especially for Trump, right, who's endorsed David Perdue. Just look at the latest Fox polling, and it shows that Kemp is ahead by 60% compared to just 28% for Perdue. Explain to our viewers out there what actually is going on, because Kemp is someone who's been relentlessly attacked by Trump, yet he is ahead, way ahead.
Yes, so part of what's happened is that Trump's platform to attack Kemp doesn't have the reach that it once did. But Kemp also has a record to run on, and it's a very conservative record. He cut taxes and sent a check to every Georgian just last week. He signed an open carry gun law. He's defended the state's new law that would limit abortions. And so it's hard to just paint him as this guy who doesn't care about Republican values. I also think that, you know, Donald Trump's main attacks are tied to that 2020 election and the big lie. And although Governor Kemp did not do what Donald Trump wanted, he was not out there, you know, being super critical of the president. And I think in some ways he's not as closely tied to Donald Trump's criticism as a Secretary Raffensperger is, who was more closer to it. He was more vocal in saying, you know, Trump is wrong. We're not going to do this. This isn't right. Kemp was resolute, didn't give Trump what he wanted, but he wasn't making these grand speeches criticizing Donald Trump that you can now bring that up. So, but all of that together has put Kemp as an incumbent in the driver's seat. And I also think David Perdue just didn't have much to run on besides, I was endorsed by Donald Trump. And we're seeing that's not enough for voters. It helps, but it's not everything.
It's interesting to see how Governor Kemp and also the other incumbent you just mentioned, the Secretary of State Raffensperger, walking that fine line, right, by not outright criticizing Trump, but championing or supporting that controversial voting restrictive legislation. So, you know, what will happen, or what will it mean if Senator Perdue, the former senator, loses big? I mean, obviously Trump likes to win, and you know he wants to have a good endorsement record right now, which looks quite mixed.
Yes, very mixed. I think it's two things. Number one, I think it's going to continue to give Republicans a blueprint for how to win, even if the candidate doesn't have a Trump endorsement, which in some ways I think Republicans are looking for. They want to get past the age of Trump. In a swing state like Georgia, Trump can bring you down in a general election. So candidates like Glenn Youngkin and Brian Kemp are showing you can win without being super MAGA, super Trumpy. And that will put them in a better position in a general election, as we did see in Virginia. You know, I also think it's showing that I think we're going to see maybe President Trump coming back and not doing as many endorsements, being a little bit more cautious, perhaps listening to some of the people who said, we don't think this is a good idea. Maybe he's going to be a little bit more limited and judicious as he considers who to endorse going forward.
Do you think it also talks to the momentous shift that we're seeing in Georgia in terms of demographics, especially when you're seeing a Trump-backed candidate like Perdue not really tracking? And you know, although it's a different story for the Secretary of State, we'll get to him in just a bit. But I mean, it does kind of symbolically show what's happening in Georgia politically.
I think politically in Georgia, you know, conservative voters tend to not be the most, you know, diverse electorate on the Republican side, but they're mindful of what it will take to win in the general election. And Republican voters are very pragmatic. And I think that's something they're thinking about. Who is the candidate that we think can go up against Stacey Abrams in November?
I wish we had more time. Just a quick question. How are voters or GOP voters differentiating Kemp versus Raffensperger, both of whom have been attacked by Trump? Because Raffensperger is obviously in a much tighter race with Trump-backed Jody Hice.
He is. I think voters are taking each race one by one, and Brian Kemp's just better known. Raffensperger, you know, Secretary of State, they have very big jobs, but they're not usually household names.
He's a household name now.
But he's a household name on the Republican side with the more negative connotation. There's a lot more undecided voters as well in the Secretary of State's race, which is usual for a down ballot race. So it's just a very different dynamic when you're further down the ballot. Again, when you're a candidate whose name ID does probably have a little bit more negative connotation.
Sure. Interesting. Well, Tia Mitchell, I wish we had more time. Just stick around during the break. We'll talk off the air. But thanks so much for coming in, Tia. Appreciate it. Boris?
Still ahead, helping veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Lawmakers reach a bipartisan deal to help veterans and their families. Coming up, we're going to hear from the family of one service member who fought to get the benefits they earned about the impact of this bill. Stay with us. This week, Senate leaders reached a deal to help veterans exposed to toxic smoke from burn pits. The pits were commonly used to incinerate everything from trash and munitions to hazardous materials and chemical compounds. They could be found at military sites throughout Iraq and Afghanistan and other war zones up until about 2010. The Senate bill is named in honor of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He died in 2020 from lung cancer after toxic exposure tied to his military service. Sergeant Robinson's widow, Danielle, was a guest at this year's State of the Union. During the address, President Biden praised Heath's service and called on Congress to take action.
He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better.
Joining us now is Danielle Robinson, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. Danielle, we appreciate your work and your time, and we honor Heath's service. First, I want to understand how you connected his diagnosis, lung cancer in his mid-30s, to his exposure to burn pits. What did he tell you about them?
Well, I wasn't aware of a burn pit until 2017. We actually went to his oncologist for the first time after he was having gushing nosebleeds and lost his voice, and an ENT did a biopsy on a lymph node and found it to be cancer. And when we saw our oncologist in Columbus, Ohio, the first thing he said when we came in the room was, "What have you been exposed to?" The way this cancer is presenting is only due to toxic exposure, and he didn't have any genetic factors. He was a non-smoker. He was running half marathons about 6 months before his diagnosis. So it was actually our oncologist that brought it up first.
But I understand that you had some issues trying to get help for him because there was a burden of proof that members of the military had to meet in order to get aid. What was that like?
So he was active duty when he was diagnosed, and he was medically separated from the military, and he was granted service connection 100% due to his lung cancer. But once we entered the VA, we were getting denials on medications, getting delayed imaging, getting delayed treatments, and then I was denied caregiver benefits because they said they could not tie it in to being exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Kosovo. So that's where, even though he was 100% service connected at the time, he was denied benefits.
And what is it like when you speak to the families of other veterans who may be in a similar position and they share with you the struggles that they face? What advice do you have for them? What kind of support can you offer them?
There are veterans groups out there to help them, such as Burn Pits 360 and, the VFW and Wounded Warrior Project and so many other veterans organizations that if you do reach out to them, they will help you with the paperwork during the process of the VA. But we want this legislation passed so that these families don't have to be their own advocates and their own lawyers as they're trying to take care of their loved ones who are in dire need of health care, and they're coming down with these toxic exposure illnesses. So with legislation like this, we hope to get that taken care of and get the VA working towards getting these claims processed and in a good manner and get them approved so they don't have to battle denials and appeals.
The Senate is expected to take up the bill when it returns from a break in June. I'm wondering what your message to these lawmakers who are going to vote on this is. What would you say to them?
I want them to know what it's like to have to see your loved one on the floor and literally have a gushing bloody nose at the same time they're throwing up and they're trying to breathe. And you're sitting here trying to talk them through just getting through the day and the night. And they serve our country, they go overseas, and now this is the war that has followed them home, and we need to take care of them at home. As you go through, Senate building in the House of Representatives and Congress and Capitol Hill, you see POW flags all over the place. And you see these senators saying that they are here for veterans. These soldiers are actually prisoner of war at home in their own bodies as they're battling these health-related illnesses from toxic exposures. And I'm asking you that we need this passed now. We have soldiers that are literally entering into hospice right now and not getting diagnosis they need and not the health care they need in their final years, months, weeks, and days of their life. This is detrimental, and this is urgent, and this has to happen now.
The war that followed them home. Danielle Robinson, again, we appreciate your work. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Boris.
Of course. New Day is back after a few minutes. Stay with us. An update now to a story we've been following closely all morning. A second person has been confirmed killed from a rare tornado in northern Michigan.
Wow! Look at that!
Witnesses describe hearing what sounded like a freight train as the tornado tore through the town of Gaylord. Michigan authorities just gave an update in the last hour. They say 44 people were also hurt. One person remains unaccounted for at this hour. About 6,600 homes still have no power. Many roads remain blocked by debris, and another curfew will be in place there tonight. Weather officials say the first tornado warning came in at about 3:38 p.m. local time yesterday, the tornado hitting about 10 minutes later. Over 35 million people across the Northeast are under heat advisories today, with temperatures expected to climb well into the 90s. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, here in Washington, D.C., all expected to be hit by rising heat and humidity.
CNN meteorologist Allison Chinchar joining us now with more on that. It's a lot of red behind you.
Yeah, it is. And I get it. These are temperatures you normally see in the summer, but that's the point. People need time to acclimate. And unfortunately, when you get these big heat waves that hit this early in the season, people's bodies don't have quite as much time to adapt to them. So you'll see people falling ill with other heat-related illnesses, heat strokes, things like that, because they aren't yet ready to deal with the intense heat. You have over 60 locations stretching from Texas all the way up to New Hampshire that could end up breaking record temperatures not only today, but some places 2 days in a row. You've got heat advisories out across states in the Northeast that stretches from northern Delaware all the way up into New Hampshire. A lot of locations looking at potential record highs. Philadelphia, forecast high of 96. The record is 95. Washington, D.C. likely to tie their record as well. A lot of locations in the Northeast the same. We're also talking about that storm system, the same one that produced the tornado across Michigan, now moving farther to the east. So everywhere from Maine back down into Texas has the potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms today. Damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes will all be threats with this system. You have some ongoing showers and thunderstorms already right now, but the bulk of the strongest thunderstorms will actually hold off until the afternoon and the evening hours. And yes, some of these could linger into the overnight hours. So please make sure, Emma and Boris, that if you are in any of these areas, that you have a way to get those alerts before you go to bed.
Good to know. Thank you so much, Allison Chinchar. And in a new episode of Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy, Stanley steps outside Italy and into London, where he explores an unexpected wealth of amazing Italian food. Catch an all-new episode of Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy tomorrow at 9 p.m. on CNN. And thanks so much for watching and being with us. I'm Amara Walker.
Thanks for being with us today, Amara. Come back tomorrow. Early,
yes,
bright and early.
I think I will.
Of course, there's still much more ahead in the next hour of the CNN Newsroom. Alex Marquardt, our friend, picks up for Frederica Whitfield after a quick break. Stay with us.
travel and tourism trends in the region. Coming up, what the future of travel looks like as pandemic restrictions ease around the world. Welcome to this new edition of Marketplace Middle East. I'm Eleni Jakos. Now, over the past 2 years, the travel and tourism sector had to navigate unprecedented shocks and disruptions. Now, here in Dubai, industry leaders from 112 global destinations have come to discuss the future of the industry. Now, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, spending on business travel is expected to increase by 32% in the Middle East. Scott Livermore, a chief economist at Oxford Economics, tells me about the outlook for travel and tourism in the region.
I think where we are now is experiencing a strong recovery in travel and tourism in the region. This has been led by the domestic travel and tourism sector, which has risen quite significantly, and that's quite a new future for the region. Before the crisis, some 55% of travel and tourism was domestic, and that rose to 80% at the peak of the crisis.
So people are traveling internally, so you're seeing domestic tourism driving growth right now?
Absolutely, and supporting the sector. And while those ratios may come down as international travel becomes normal and vaccine rollouts and restrictions are eased, we expect this change to stay, and we expect there to be a greater role for domestic travel and tourism going forward across the region, including countries like UAE, which were predominantly dependent on international visitors.
You know, the UAE has always been sort of one of the favorites because it's a very well-known destination, it's an easy destination. Who do you think is going to come out tops in the next year or so?
Over the next year or so, I think we're going to see really strong growth in the UAE. I think they've built the infrastructure, they've got a solid base and a successful travel and tourism sector already. And then there's ambitious plans, be it Qatar, be it Abu Dhabi, and across the other Emirates.
So you see competition between the Emirates within the UAE?
Oh, absolutely. And competition's good. It allows the different tourism sectors or different regions to focus on consumer preferences. And it's all about differentiating yourself, carving out your niche, listening to what the consumer says, and then responding and delivering to that. And I think we're going to see a much more discerning and varied tourism demand around the world, and that gives scope and opportunities for the different countries within the region.
Look, you're an economist, so
Yes.
you're looking at the numbers,
Yes.
right? And when you see the oil price hitting levels where it makes flying a lot more expensive, are you worried about the knock-on effect, specifically for international travel?
I think there's a worrisome side and an optimistic side to that. The region is very dependent on medium to long haul travel. So around 2/3 of international visitors to the Middle East are classified as medium to long haul, compared to 40% for the world as a whole. And it's the long haul travel that will see the biggest impact from higher oil prices and higher airfares. And that could really limit demand for long haul travel, which this region is very dependent on. But on the other hand, high oil prices will really boost government revenues. That tends to be recycled and benefit incomes and growth in the oil exporting countries. And that's likely to lead to increased demand, especially short-haul intra-regional travel.
Tourism is expected to fuel Dubai's economy this year, and I sat down with Issam Qasim, the CEO of Dubai's Department of Economy and Tourism, to find out how the Emirate is planning to capitalize on this trend.
At the end of the day, for us, we know what we're strong in. We know where our focuses lie. End of 2021, we had 7.28 million tourists that came into Dubai. Not big numbers compared to before, but very big considering the circumstances globally. Then you look at the first quarter of this year, where Expo, of course, was tail ending the second half of Expo. We had close to 4 million visitors that came in Q1. That's amazing.
You're not back at pre-COVID levels then?
Not yet,
Not
but
yet.
the spirit is there. For us as Dubai, the appetite was always to go back to pre-COVID as much as we could. We saw 4.2% growth beginning of 2020, the first 2 months, right? Which was amazing. Come March 2020, we went into lockdown. We were one of the first cities to lock down, very strict. We opened up in May for domestic tourism, piloting the strictest of measures in place, where it gave us a chance to open up a little bit, loosen up a little bit to find that perfect balance. Once that was done by July 2020, we opened up with the spirit of never closing again. And we remained open. So it's great the fact that the private and public sector relationship is so strong that whatever we do it together. Of course, having said that, there are certain factors that are out of our control. Certain countries decide to open or close as they wish. But if we are overly reliant on one or two markets, it will impact us. So what we've done is, with the diversified market approach, we were able to capitalize in this moment where we've educated the market. All the measures that Dubai has put into place, we were able to start attracting bigger numbers, growth percentages from markets that weren't as big in the past. Today, they're so confident of what Dubai has to offer, and they've become repeat visitors. So once the other traditionally strong markets open up fully, we know we'll have a much stronger foundation to start with. Then you look at during pandemic and post-pandemic now, you're seeing that actually people are relocating to Dubai. Family businesses, home offices, regional and global headquarters relocating to Dubai from around the world.
Why do you think that is? Because Dubai is not a cheap city. It is expensive to live here, by the way.
I think it's all demand driven. And for us, we know that there is that demand right now for Dubai. Again, because of the decisive measures that were taken during the pandemic. Knowing that Dubai has the can-do attitude and we can make decisions and changes happen immediately. Because of the entrepreneurial spirit that Dubai as a city has. And I think for a lot of business leaders, a lot of decision makers, that's the fundamental difference. That's what they want. They don't want to be in a place where you're in the dark. You don't know what's going to happen. Do I hire back again now, bring people back in, and then the rules change and I have to again let go? What do I do?
So it's policy continuity.
100%. And again, it's the collective vote. I always talk about Dubai being almost like a board, where even the private sector have a say, and they're heard. And then things are implemented. So it's not just one person decides everything else. That's the difference about Dubai. And that's the spirit that really has made Dubai's success.
Coming up, Saudi Arabia, once a closed country, opening its doors to foreign tourists for the first time in 2019. And the kingdom wants to spend over $1 trillion on the sector over the next 10 years. That's all coming up after the short break. Welcome back to Marketplace Middle East. Now, Saudi Arabia opened its doors for the first time to foreign tourists in 2019, and the world's largest exporter of oil is now aiming to become a big investor in tourism. And the jewel in the crown, Al Ula. Located in the northwestern part of the kingdom, Al Ula is one of the oldest cities in the Arabian Peninsula, dating back to the 12th century. It is also home to Saudi Arabia's first UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's becoming a hotspot destination for travelers.
In the last 100 years, the country was relatively closed, and just in the last couple of years, Saudi Arabia opened up to tourism. And as part of the Vision 2030 strategy, they want to sort of embrace tourism as a pillar of the economy. And they brought in individuals like myself who have 30 plus years of experience and said, help us create a tourism ecosystem, help us develop a tourism industry in Saudi Arabia. And in Al Ula, we're ready to go because we have all the natural assets, amazing scenic beauty.
So it's an easy sell.
Well, it's an easy sell, but we have to build the hotels, we have to build the restaurants, the museums, and other attractions.
Who is your target market right now? Because perception is key, and it's chipped away in terms of what people think of Saudi Arabia, and it's not something that you can easily get away from. You have to face it head on.
I think our target audience is affluential travelers who want to be the first to experience an unknown destination. They're intrepid travelers and voyagers who want to go and say, I was the first to visit this amazing place, so they can tell their friends, tell their family, they can brag about it. But also individuals who are curious, who want to learn about thousands of years of civilizations and unknown civilizations, and really understand the impact that they had on the local community and on Saudi Arabia and the Middle East in general. And so we're seeing strong interest from, our source markets. We've identified 9 million potential visitors who want to come and experience Alula based on those profiles. So now what we're doing is we're adding flights from Dubai, we're adding flights from Paris, we're adding better flight connectivity. We've created an international airport so that visitors can arrive from around the globe.
So literally flying to Alula.
Direct flight to Alula from, Paris or London or Milan or hopefully the United States one day.
Having been in the industry for so long, you know that the tourist is after a certain experience, right? So they want to see new things, but they also are used to having a certain amount of relaxation, and that's usually with a glass of wine or a cocktail, specifically in the markets you've mentioned. If you're looking at the US and Europe, how are you getting around those cultural and religious aspects when you're trying to target tourists?
So most of the old restrictions that were in place are gone. Women can dress like you are dressed today. They don't have to cover their head. They don't have to wear a baya. You can wear a bikini at the pool in Habitas. Women are doing that now. So the change that is happening in this country of Saudi Arabia is fairly dramatic. It's a mindset change more than anything else.
And alcohol will be served, for example?
Ultimately, I think that's an option. I said it's not available today, but just like in Dubai, it started slowly.
It's like liberalization is happening.
Step by step. And I think, down the road, that could be a potential opportunity.
Well, that's it for this edition of Marketplace Middle East. If you want to know more about the stories that we're covering, you can head to our website. From me, Eleni Jakas, I'll see you next time.
Lockdowns, travel bans, and an unprecedented health crisis. COVID-19 has left no corner of the world untouched since it was officially declared a global pandemic in March of 2020. 2 years into the pandemic, China experienced its worst outbreak since the early days of the virus. Major cities across the country entered lockdowns, including some of its biggest financial and international hubs.
We look at China, its zero-tolerance approach to COVID-19, and how it's affecting its economy and the global supply chain. Plus, Bollywood is big business in India, but has the pandemic pushed audiences online? We take a closer look at the country's emerging streaming giants. All that and more right here on Marketplace Asia. It's China's biggest and most affluent city, but its streets were empty for almost 2 months. In the spring of 2022, Shanghai battled its worst ever COVID-19 outbreak, determined to crush it with a zero-COVID strategy. It comes at a steep cost to its economy and has implications for the world.
Shanghai is an economic powerhouse for China. It holds one of the 2 stock exchanges.
Shanghai is home to the world's biggest container port. It's been up and running, but the lockdowns have triggered a bottleneck. According to logistics platform Project 44, by the end of April, shipment delays between China and major ports in the US and Europe quadrupled. Truck drivers have also struggled to reach ports for pickup due to travel restrictions and testing requirements. China's zero-COVID strategy forced many factories in Shanghai to suspend operations. In late April, production resumed at Tesla, with CEO Elon Musk saying Tesla Shanghai is coming back with a vengeance. But the company warned it too is not immune from supply chain problems, which limits its factories from running at full capacity. According to data from the China Passenger Car Association, in April, Tesla's production in China slid 81% compared to March, and Tesla did not export a single Shanghai-made vehicle in April. Factories have been struggling to reopen as pandemic rules require the isolation of workers inside a closed loop, which includes living facilities at the factory. And some have had enough. All-out chaos in this viral video showing workers at Apple supplier Quanta clashing with guards in hazmat suits. And it's not just Shanghai. The pain of China's punishing lockdowns has been felt across the country, including the Chinese capital, Beijing. At least 32 Chinese cities are under full or partial lockdown, affecting up to 220 million residents. That's according to CNN's calculations of government data on May the 12th. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang pledged measures to boost jobs and maintain stability after warning of a complex and grave employment situation. That warning came after China's official jobless rate hit a near 2-year high of 5.8% in March. Meanwhile, China's export growth hit a 2-year low in April. And yet, despite the costs, China is refusing to let go of its zero-COVID policy. In a strongly worded speech, Chinese President Xi Jinping doubled down on China's pandemic strategy, saying, "At present, the COVID control work is at a critical stage of sailing upstream. If we do not advance, we will fall back. We should test everyone who should be tested, quarantine everyone who should be quarantined, and treat everyone who should be treated." International business is losing patience. Both the American and EU chambers of commerce in China warn of a mass exodus of foreign talent in the months ahead.
The mood is not good, obviously, and you can see from chamber survey to chamber survey, and 70% also say that they are withholding investment into China. We are not moving out of China, but definitely the inability of traveling into China and out again at the same time, this kind of uncertainty just puts everything on pause.
You've called China's leadership prisoners of their own narrative. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the narrative is East is rising, the West is dropping down. Look at the mess in America. We would love to have China with an off-ramp in order to show that actually you can live with Omicron. We would all accept this, but this uncertainty about basically sticking to zero tolerance is not a solution for us.
A strict zero-COVID policy has also hammered Hong Kong, both its economy and status as an international business hub. Incoming leader John Lee has pledged to solidify the city's international role.
What can you say right now to reassure the international community that Hong Kong is back open for business?
COVID is not going to live with us forever. At some stage, it will be under control. It is important that we will do a good balancing act so that on the one hand, we will keep the disease under control, but at the same time, we will allow business to go about as much as possible.
With restrictions easing and tourists permitted for the first time since 2020, Hong Kong is slowly moving toward opening up to the rest of the world. But the territory and its officials are still tethered to China, where punishing lockdowns have no end in sight. The bottom line for the global business community: brace yourselves for further fallout. India, home to the colorful world of Bollywood. Pre-pandemic, this industry was booming, but more than 2 years of COVID-19 have directly impacted this once flourishing sector.
And that has prompted Indian fans to turn to online streaming platforms, including names you may not recognize. CNN's Vedika Sud has more.
Bollywood, India's Hindi language movie industry, where the fate and fortune of films is determined by in-theatre audiences. A protracted pandemic fractured this more than a century-old industry. Bollywood's earning blitz slowed to a crawl, from $2.6 billion in 2019 to just $1 billion in 2020. Pre-pandemic, cinemas here in India played an integral role in launching new Bollywood hits to their dedicated audience, but numbers have dwindled. Local media reports major losses for some of the country's biggest cinema chains. Inox, a multiplex operator, reported losses of more than $11 million in 2020, while PVR, another cinema chain, reported losses of over $39 million in March 2021. Analysts say India is still watching Bollywood at a record rate. They're simply doing so online.
What we've seen is that the top 30 to 40 million, the premium audiences, they've taken extensively to OTT streaming. And that's really the growth that we're seeing in the market.
Streaming giant Netflix entered the Indian market in 2016, while Disney Plus Hotstar was launched here in 2020. Here in India, local homegrown players continue to thrive in the market, like MX Player, a popular Indian streaming app, and Alt Balaji, a subscription-based platform with original content. But streaming giant Z5 claims to have the most offerings in South Asia, with over 8.9 million daily active users as of 2020. The service is owned by Z Entertainment Enterprises, India's major media conglomerate that has produced Bollywood movies and content for 3 decades.
Our intent for going digital was on the back of wanting to really connect directly with the consumer. With COVID and, theaters not being a possibility, People were just coming onto the platform.
Analysts say India's rapidly growing mobile internet population is behind much of this growth.
India today has 795 million internet subscriptions.
Local platforms have an added competitive edge by tapping into the country's various regional languages. India has 22 official languages and many more unofficial ones.
Any kind of content has to have a language play.
Some industry players here say that with streaming platforms, the audience has never been more powerful. Ram Madhwani is one of the directors behind major Bollywood cinematic hit Tare Zameen Par. In 2020, he made his streaming debut, directing Disney Plus Hotstar series Arya, followed by Netflix film Dhamaka in 2021.
I think that the power of the remote control for the audience to throw me out of their living room with just one button is a huge learning about how to keep them engaged.
Bollywood actor Raveena Tandon made her streaming debut on Netflix in 2021, starring in the thriller series Aranyak.
I think our industry has faced new challenges every time with every new leap of technology. OTT kept the industry on life support, and I think that is what worked.
For some of India's streaming platforms, global expansion is the end goal. In June 2021, ZEE5 launched in the US and plans to break into new markets soon too.
It's exciting to be where we are today, but we've got a long way to go.
Globally, the video streaming market has shown signs of slowing down. Industry leader Netflix made headlines in April when its stock market price plunged 35%. The company lost subscribers for the first time in a decade, citing shared passwords and increased competition as factors. As more contenders enter the streaming wars, we are yet to see how India's homegrown players will fare on a global scale.
While global expansion may be the end goal for many of these companies, they continue to evolve for local audiences as well. In fact, as recently as April this year, ZEE5 announced plans to increase investment in Indian regional language content. And for more on these stories and others, check out our website. Just go to cnn.com/marketplaceasia. I'm Christy Lou Stout in Hong Kong. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Liberia is home to one of Africa's most vibrant surfing communities.
The ocean is where we always want to be. We feel relaxed being in the ocean, like our home, you know.
Their stories are being documented in a film aimed at reframing the country's narrative.
Documentaries are really powerful. Specifically for Liberia, it's great to kind of share the culture and repackage and remarket a place because they kind of deserve it, you know. I think documentary is a great vehicle for that.
I think there are a lot of Black filmmakers who are really trying their best to showcase Africans in the diaspora in a positive light as well as in an authentic light, and that's something that we need.
This is the story of surfing Liberia. This is Inside Africa.
To me, storytelling is one of the most powerful things anyone can do. To tell a story is to allow people to feel not alone, to allow people to be seen, to allow people to be heard. But for me, the power of storytelling comes in with empowerment.
Filmmaker Artina Michelle was born in Staten Island, New York, during Liberia's Civil War. Like many people of their generation, her parents left Liberia as refugees and raised her in the United States, where she pursued a career in film.
It's very unconventional that I became a filmmaker because no one else in my family is. But when I went to college, I ended up taking a film analysis course, and I realized that cinematography was like the rhetoric of film. I didn't know that there was a visual language prior to that. I started feeling a passion really igniting in me, and that led me to the industry. Yeah.
For the past 8 years, she has worked as a cinematographer on films like the blockbuster Creed II and independent short doc Dear Philadelphia. It was on a trip to Liberia in 2018 to visit her family and to connect with her heritage, where she truly discovered her purpose as a filmmaker.
Right now we're going to my cousin Ajua's house to go eat with the family. We're gonna go grub, eat some palm butter, and maybe some dry rice, yeah. My family is love, you know? Always joyful because I don't get to see them as often as, you know, my family members in the States. I just feel warm here, I feel welcomed, and I feel excited to see everybody. For me, usually when I see films about Liberia, they're usually made by Europeans. To make a film is a very big privilege, to be honest. For us who our lives led us out of the country and back to the country, I think that's something that we can unify with, that we can lift one another up with. And I truly just really want those who are not often heard from to be heard, basically, yeah.
Have you ever heard about surfing? What about surfing? Surfing? Surfing on the highway. Oh, surfing? What I to take picture? Me tell you, oh, not a big sunny.
Now Artina has taken on the biggest challenge of her career, directing her first feature documentary on a subject she never imagined she would be interested in.
A cousin of mine told me about the surf scene happening here, and I realized that I never heard about that before. Growing up, even going to the beach after prom, my parents were like, don't go in the water. Being around the ocean wasn't really a part of our culture, and I started connecting with surfers over here. And once I started connecting with surfers and actually visiting Liberia as an adult, I was like, wow, there are a lot of stories that aren't told, where I can authentically show people, show the culture from how we know it. That to me got me really excited to make a feature documentary. Before then, I had no real aspirations to direct. I think my directorial debut came from a need that I saw in the community.
The documentary introduces viewers to Liberia's growing surf community and Liberians' broader relationship with the ocean.
This Too Is Liberia is the title of the feature documentary that I'm creating. It follows Melvin Escabocoli Jr. He's a certified surf instructor, and he's teaching kids about surf therapy and how to cope, as well as teaching them about water safety. Following the story of Liberia through the eyes of Melvin, and Melvin is kind of opening us up to a new perspective about the country.
Yo, bro, you ready? Let's go surfing.
I always feel like I'm home when I'm surfing. It brings a lot of passion to me.
It changed your life. It changed your mind. When you start surfing, you meet a lot of people. I'm an intermediate surfer.
Yeah, Chris is a beginner surfer.
I never knew Liberian kids would have interest in surfing.
One of my biggest goals for the film was to make sure that everyone in the country sees the film. Because I want the film to empower Liberians first, I do want it to be something where, you know, the world is introduced to Liberia, but I also want it to be home. Home is the priority for this.
4 years since the project began, This Too Is Liberia is in the final stages of filming before heading into post-production.
The phrase, "This Too Is Liberia," comes from a phrase here that people use when something goes wrong. Let's say, for instance, you call someone, they don't show up, and it's their job to, they'll be like, "This too is Liberia," or if something breaks, it's like, "This too is Liberia." So it has a very negative connotation here. And I wanted to show the positive things and say this too is what the country is. As the journey of the film has been happening, it's kind of both that we're documenting. We're documenting some of the hardships that happen here, as well as the positive things that a lot of the world has never seen before.
Joining Artina on set is her long-term friend and colleague, Marcus Clark, who is the film's co-director.
Where we are now is we're at Robertsport, which is a beautiful location where a lot of surfers that we are filming surf. So the aesthetic to this film is really just trying to show and stay authentic to Liberia as a whole, the whole vibe of it, the people. the scenery. So we don't really want to impose any perspective. We just want to kind of be verite and be a fly on the wall and observe.
Marcus's first time going to Liberia.
So excited.
How you feeling?
So excited.
Hailing from Philadelphia, USA, visiting Liberia has also been a deeply personal experience for him.
My first time in Africa, it's been a trip. You know, like a Black American, you're kind of in a bubble.
We made it, we made it, we made it.
I guess you don't really have roots, or if you do have roots, you don't really know them, much of them in Africa. And I've been an American my whole life, so it's really nice to kind of be in touch with my African side. And it's just been kind of overwhelming and also humbling because it just makes me want to kind of explore my own lineage and my own ancestry. This production's been just more personal in the sense of other productions I can really have a distance from them, but this is more like a definite how I identify myself as a Black American. It's just been fun to kind of explore that side of myself.
A gem throughout this whole process is the connection that I've been able to create with the surfing community here, the surfers. They've been so welcoming, a lot of them, and just very open to sharing their stories, to letting us into their lives. And through that, we've been able to basically become like family. So they inspire me in a lot of ways. And they're teaching me more too about the Liberian way, which is a communal way of living.
And she says these surfers are slowly getting her more comfortable in the water and hope to one day get her out in the ocean on a surfboard.
I'm going to get a surf lesson from Philip Banini, who is also featured in this too as Liberia. And I get to follow his life a little bit, but today he's going to show me the ropes.
Philip Banini is a veteran of the Liberian surf scene.
So I think it was after the war in 2003, some Americans came to Robertsport, Liberia, where they started surfing our waves here. And they came across a Black guy, Arthur Lomax, who is the first Liberian surfer. And they taught him the sport, and that was how he too started sharing it with the locals around here. So I started surfing like around 2010 when I got into surfing. And it was the same Arthur Lomax who encouraged me and put me into it. I would say Robertsport is coming to that level where people wants to come from other places in the world to like enjoy the waves, because I've experienced that a lot. I'm in Robertsport, but people sometimes email me, WhatsApp me from other countries. Oh, Philip, we want to come to Robertsport, we want to come to the guest house, and we want to surf the waves that's in Robertsport. So I think it's getting to that level.
Making this doc has honestly not inspired me to surf, but to definitely learn how to be a better swimmer, because I literally could only doggy paddle before I got here. So Melvin was teaching me about surfing. My cousins here were teaching me about swimming, and I've been open to getting into the water more for sure. But hopefully by the end of production, I will be an Olympic swimmer.
describe rubber sport as a paradise, you know. Place where you can come and enjoy your stay, a quiet area where the beaches are clean. We got a nice wave. The people in the community are welcoming. There is a self-spirit among us.
And it's here, among the palm trees and sea spray, that filmmaker Artina Michelle has connected with a new way of living.
For me, the greatest lesson that I've learned being here, documenting here, is to not rush, to allow life to just be life. Stories to just be stories, to not try to place my own understanding on things, but to be humble to what is and to accept it. In a sense, before coming here, before connecting with Liberia, there was a disconnect in how to live, basically. Like, the American way, the Western way is to rush. It's to get things done, is to be productive, and productive by way of like industry and all of these different things that are bigger, corporations and all of that. But for here, it just slows me down. And I think that that has allowed me to connect with myself in a grander way. It's allowed me to connect with my family in a better way, to just sit and just be and just talk. To me, that's the beauty of being here, and that's like the greatest life lesson that I've learned so far.
Surfing has some dedicated followers in Liberia.
The thing I love more about surfing is that it's something that makes me happy, you know. I feel like I'm home whenever I'm in the water. I'm with friends, you know, we're sharing fun. Yeah, I think that's why I love surfing.
A fishing village, today Robertsport, is arguably the West African country's most popular surf destination. Or that's at least what local guesthouse owner Philip Banini will tell you.
Basically, we have 6 different breaks, but for me, the #1 break here in Robertsport is Elsa Gardens, where the waves are always amazing.
As well as being an experienced surfer, Philip is a community leader. He's also a board member of Robertsport's recently established First Surf Club.
You know, this is something we started since surfing started, because we've been dreaming about it. We've been hoping that our day will come where we will own something for ourselves. Now, as I speak to you, we have our new surf club on hand, where surfers will be empowered. You know, people will be able to get $5 or $10, take care of their families and their children to school. The role I play in the surfing community is I look like a person almost everybody look up to in the surf club. I represent them. The surfing community in Robertsport is, it's massive. And we also got some female surfers, which is a massive achievement to the surfing community in Robertsport.
As one of the only female surfers, Irene Butterfly George hopes to play a role in growing the representation of women in the sport, and plans to one day open her own surf school, where she plans to teach more Liberian women to learn to swim and surf.
This is my favorite tattoos these days. My surfboard and wave. Got a words that encourage me. Yes, never give up on surfing. Like I said I will never give up in surfing when I got here.
Often the only woman in the water, her skills have earned her the nickname Butterfly, because she moves through the waves like she's flying.
Most thing I love about surfing because it keeps you out of trouble, #1. And it makes you focus. It makes you know how to talk to people. And the main reason I love surfing because I think it will be my passion. When I got my first wave, since I started surfing, my first wave I ever got, I was like so comfortable because like I feel like I was on a car drive, you know, taking a very nice and smooth ride. Even when I get old, I will still surf. Yes, that's my dream.
Being one of a handful of women in her field is something Artina can relate to.
I would say to be a Black female director of photography is very rare. I haven't come across many. I have a few peers that are in it, but a lot of times, even being a Black woman in film in general, is not something where we have a large population of people doing it. So to be one of the women, especially a Black woman in the film industry today, knowing how, at least in American cinema, Africans and African Americans are usually shown. There are a lot of stereotypes. There are a lot of things that me personally I can't relate to, But I believe that there's a new wave happening, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
So currently we are at the house where I was born and raised. My parents lived here since they came from Ghana. They relocated to Liberia. Growing up in Robertsport for me was something encouraging to me because looking at the community where I'm from, as a child growing up, I was going to fishing at the same time going to school. So that's something that I built in my mind that one day I want Robertsport to be somebody.
Tourism plays a crucial role in the development of the surf community. From the economy to visiting surfers sharing their skills with the local crowd, to providing surf wax and even boards.
Not get a surfboard here in Liberia. Yeah, all the surfboards out there, we don't buy them. You know, we get them from people who come here and like the sport and they want us to do it. So they don't know when they're going back, they give us their boards.
Despite having to share boards and sometimes having to surf on broken boards, the surf scene here is cooking. Every day, surfers dot the backline, determined to conquer the waves.
So I would describe the spirit of the surfing community here in Robertsport as something that we all want to do. It's like whenever there are waves, even when there are no waves, but one way or the other, people want to be in the ocean because once we see our friends out there in the ocean, I mean, we can get jealous. Like, you know, I want to be out there. I hope I can be there. But sometimes you want to be there, but you don't have the equipment to be there. So the surfing spirit in Robertsport is very, very much encouraging. Now, if you go on the beach, you see the kids doing amazing stuff. So, yeah, there are a lot of talents here.
I really like surfing because when I come surfing, I feel like I'm one of the best men on planet Earth. I feel really happy. Yeah, if you're in the water, you don't think on nothing, you don't think on food, you don't think on money. The only thing you think on is the wave.
One of 8 siblings, Masalei's brother taught him to surf 3 years ago.
Well, like the first time I come on the beach and then like my brother bring me on the beach and say, come and see me surfing, and then when I come, I watch him surfing, I feel really happy, and then so I say, oh, I want to learn how to surf, and then he taught me how to surf.
Today he's recognized as one of the best surfers here and one of the only ones who has mastered a 360, a trick he said he learned from a French tourist.
I surf better than almost everybody now, yeah. Like my surfing, like I want to be really cool. Maybe one day I can be maybe one of the best surfers in the world, yeah.
At 17, Masalei splits his time between school, his job at Philip's guest house, selling bracelets to tourists, and the ocean.
My favorite food is, I really like to cook. It's potato green, yeah, and then potato green with plenty with rice. I really like that, it's really nice. Firstly, you wash a pot, put oil in it. If you put oil, the oil is hot, then you put a green in it. Then you can put onion, feta, and then you put the pepper after, and then you lay it down, and then maybe you can put fish inside or plenty. I really like cooking. If I cook, I feel happy, man. Yeah, it's cool to cook. For men to cook, it's look nice. It's great.
Everything he earns, he puts towards his education and helping his family.
The money I own, like I usually I take it to my mom because my family who don't have really support. Yeah, so only my mom one is here now. My dad is not here, so only my mom. So I take it to her to help her. Sometimes she can buy fish. Yeah, if she get more profit, yeah, she add it all and then send me to school.
His plan when he finishes school is, like Philip, to open a guest house of his own so he can continue to share Robertsport surf culture with the world.
Robertsport is a really nice place. Like the surfer in Robertsport is really nice. Everybody together, like everybody know each other. Like we feel happy if we're together. We're in the water, we chill everybody.
For the past 4 years, filmmaker Artina Michelle has been documenting Liberia's surf story. During the process, she's learned a lot about the country and herself.
The biggest lesson so far that I've learned about Liberia is that Liberia is abundant. The country is rich, the people are rich, the land is rich. But through just circumstances that are beyond a lot of the population's control, it's just really hard to access that potential. And I think that being here has allowed me to just connect with that more. And that truly is the story that isn't told. It just made me proud, to be honest. It made me proud to be Liberian.
As for the surfers, they hope that this is just the start of the story.
My dream for surfing is that surfing will continue to grow. This sport called surfing will attract more people to the country. And I think it's about time that the country itself sees the importance in focusing on the surfers in Robertsport. I want them to know that there's a sport called surfing in Liberia and there are a lot of Liberians involved into it.
Countdown to kick off the UEFA Women's Champions League final in Turin, now just under 1 hour away. Wouldn't it be great to make it 8? If you're a Lyon fan, the answer is yes. Why defending champs Barcelona, though, may just have something to say about all that. Tiger Woods making the cut at the PGA Championship, but who'll break through the pack this moving Saturday at Southern Hills? And on the eve of the French Open in Paris, we're hearing from the precocious Spanish teen looking to try and dethrone his idol as the king of clay. CNN's World Sport beginning right now. Hi there, welcome to World Sport on one huge weekend of sports, and that's before we even get to what's likely to be a nervy, highly dramatic Championship Sunday in England's Premier League. We do start, though, the 104th PGA Championship, where the young American golfer Will Zalatoris will take a one-shot lead into today's third round at the Oakland Hills Country Club. The 25-year-old, one of a number of really compelling storylines we're following this weekend in Oklahoma. Zalatoris recording a superb 5-under par 65 on Friday to get himself to a 9-under 131 strokes. That's the lowest 36-hole tally in 8 majors at this venue. His confidence must be soaring right now. Remember, he was runner-up at the Masters last year to Japan's Hideki Matsuyama. Now, the Chilean golfer, in just his second start in a major, has written himself into the headlines. Mito Pereira here, thanks to a really impressive round of 64, 6 under par on the day, and just one shot off the pace. The 27-year-old from Santiago firing 7 birdies and just 1 bogey, and he has second place all to himself as of right now. And how about this from the two-time Masters champ Bubba Watson right in the mix as well at 5 under. The 43-year-old firing a 63 to match the lowest 18-hole score in tournament history. An amazing round that even featured 2 bogeys. And there was more to come, because at the very last, he even narrowly misses from just over 20 feet for a 62, which would have equaled Brandon Grace's all-time major championship record set at the British Open in 2017. Watson will take that, though. It's his lowest career round in a major by 4 shots. Zalatoris at 9 under. Pereira 1 back. 2017 champ Justin Thomas 3 off the pace after a second straight 67. And Tiger Woods, have to say, showing real grit to shoot a 1 under 69 to make the cut, but currently 12 shots off the lead. Some big names did miss the cut, including Masters champion Scottie Scheffler. Let's cross live now to CNN World Sports' Don Riddell for us at Southern Hills. Don, thanks for joining us. We do start with Tiger Woods, who just clearly does not know the meaning of the word quit, does he? Really resilient on Friday, makes the cut. Your thoughts?
Yeah, resilience is the word, Patrick. Welcome to Southern Hills Country Club, where the weather has changed somewhat. It was heat stroke weather yesterday. Now I see people walking around with blankets to try and keep warm. Brilliant round from Tiger, all things considered yesterday. Greatly improved from his opening round, which was just so disappointing and so painful for him in so many different ways. As you say, he made the cut. He outperformed, he outscored his playing partner, Rory McIlroy. And, you know, he turned up at the start of the week saying that he thought he could win. He definitely thought he could win. I think most of us just see it as an achievement that he's made the cut, given that many other top players, including the world #1 Scottie Scheffler, did not. And, yeah, he was in pretty reflective mood at the end of it.
I want to be able to play the major championships. I've always loved playing them. You know, coming back here to a place that I've had success on, and to play against the best players in the world, that's what, you know, we all want to be able to do. And fortunately enough, you know, I'm able to somehow do it. I've had a great PT staff that has put Humpty Dumpty back together.
Yeah, look, he's the ultimate pro. Looking at him yesterday, I wouldn't have been, if it had been me, you know, I would have been considering pulling out and just going home. But, you know, Tiger's, he's different, and he's proved he's different. And, yeah, it was just a monumental effort.
Now, Tiger Woods did tell us last night that he thought he could still win. It was still possible. I think that's looking increasingly more and more unlikely. He's out there in 3 layers just to try and keep warm today. And unfortunately, his golf ball is all over the course. He's already found the water. He's had a triple bogey, 2 other bogeys, not going at all well for Tiger Woods. But, you know, for many of us, it's just great to see him here competing again in a major and being involved on the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. You're spot on. As Rory said, Woods is just not the kind of golfer who's just pack it all in and head home. Wow, he's made of strong stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see how young Zalatoris handles the heat of battle right this weekend. What has impressed you most about him so far, Don?
Well, he's just so chill, he's so calm, his demeanour is just kind of, let's get on with it. What really has impressed me, and he's known for this, is his ball striking. But what's really made the difference this week is his putting. He's actually known as one of the weakest putters on tour. This week, he's the best. That is an extraordinary transformation. He's just been absolutely superb. A clean 65 yesterday, no bogeys. Remember, he's hardly played in any major tournaments. In the 7 majors that he's played in previously, he's had 4 top 10 finishes. That's remarkable for a guy who's never won on the regular PGA Tour. And afterwards, I asked him what it is that he thinks the major tournaments, why do they bring out the best in him?
Kind of had an attitude with the majors, especially since the Masters, where I wanted to enjoy the experience as much as I could, and I don't want to leave anything, you know, looking back 20 years from now, I don't want to regret any, you know, my attitude or anything like that. And so I just make sure that after, you know, really every single shot I hit, it's just, I don't want to say life or death, but, you know, make sure I'm fully committed to everything that I do, because we only get 4 of them a year.
Patrick, I'm not sure if he believes in fate and destiny, but here is something fascinating. The previous 7 majors that have been played here at the Southern Hills Country Club, the guy that's been leading or co-leading after 36 holes has ended up collecting the trophy on Sunday. So if that trend continues, Will Zalatoris will be a first-time major winner tomorrow. However, that is an awful lot of pressure and expectation for somebody so young who hasn't really been in this position very often.
Yeah, I bet he's thanking you right now, Don. Way to go, heaping all that pressure on him with that terrific stat, though, I will say. I want to talk about Mito Pereira, doing South American golf proud right now. Tell us more about him, Don.
Yeah, you know, a great week for Chilean golf. 2 Chilean golfers in the top 20. Joaquin Niemann also doing very, very well this week. But yeah, I mean, a terrific performance for Mito Pereira, who is playing in only his 2nd major tournament. That is just extraordinary to go out and shoot a 64 the way he did on Friday afternoon. The conditions were perfect, to be honest. A lot of guys out there on the course doing well, but this was a phenomenal performance. And his backstory is really, really interesting. He took up golf at a very early age. He said he played in his first tournament at the age of 6, his first international tournament at the age of 8. But then he got to a point in his teens where he just quit. He stopped playing golf for 2 years, only to return to the game at the age of 17. And I asked him afterwards, I said, if somebody then had told you when you stopped playing golf that within a decade you would be contending in a major, what would you have said? This was his answer.
That you're crazy. No, I mean, I took that 2 years off, but when I came back, I knew I could do it. I knew I could get to here, and I just kept the confidence. And obviously, there were some up and downs, but really happy to be here.
Well, he and Will Zalatoris will be playing in the final group here this afternoon, teeing off in a few hours' time. And as I said earlier, Patrick, it feels like a completely different event, a completely different golf course. And as I say that, the rain really is now coming down. So it's going to be fascinating to see how these guys adjust from what they've experienced in the last few days in terms of the heat and the humidity. And now this.
Yeah. Don, thank you. You've had it all there, haven't you? You and the team there in Oklahoma, we do thank you. Thanks so much, mate.
All right.
Well, next up, we are counting down the minutes to kick off in today's big Women's Champions League final. How a special piece of history from Lyon's past streak of dominance may yet prove to be all the inspiration their opponents Barcelona need today. And Turin, stay with us. Back with a look ahead now to the hugely anticipated Women's Champions League final in Turin, where in just under an hour's time, Barcelona will take on French powerhouse Lyon. Saturday's match, a rematch, in fact, of the 2019 final, in which Lyon thrashed the Spanish giants 4-1. Barcelona, though, are the defending champions right now as they seek to become the first back-to-back champs since Lyon won this competition 5 times in a row, starting in 2016. And the Catalans, who won the Spanish league with a perfect 30 victories from 30 fixtures, will need absolutely no motivation whatsoever going into today's final.
Bueno, a ver, el recuerdo pues amargo.
I have painful memories from that final. It was our first one and it went badly. It was painful in the short term, but in the long term, I think it was good in some ways because it showed us where we were as a team in terms of the level needed to become European champions, and it got us working hard. We were training even harder after that. More competitive. It might seem simple, but it's about working hard on a daily basis over a long period of time. And now we are here for our 3rd European final in 4 years. I hope we can win our 2nd Champions League title in a row on Saturday.
Well, standing in Barcelona's path, though, the competition's most formidable and decorated club. In fact, Lyon now looking for a record-extending 8th triumph. The French team led by their superstar Norwegian Ada Hegerberg, who's returning to form after her 21 months out due to injury.
I kind of always kept believing that I would be back here again. It's been very tough days. That's why I feel like a little kid being back again. It was a hell of a work, but I'm just enjoying every second of it, and being here with Wendy, that I've shared so many moments with during the years. It's a crazy feeling. Now I just want to enjoy it, but at the same time, kill it tomorrow.
And it all starts in just over 45 minutes from right now. Ahead, revving up for action ahead of this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. And in the build-up to day 1 of the French Open, what, or rather who, is fueling a new lease of life for Romanian tennis star Simona Halep? Back with Formula One and the race for pole position ahead of Sunday's Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona on Friday. It was championship leading Charles Leclerc and his Ferrari who topped both practice sessions in the build-up to the sixth race of the 2022 season. And the man from Monaco, having recovered from a spin, will be very pleased indeed to secure pole position just a short while ago on this Saturday. This after a really tight and tense battle with the reigning world champion Max Verstappen, who was hampered by a final lap loss of power. Huge frustrations for the young Dutchman. The other Ferrari man, Carlos Sainz, in third place this Saturday. Now from Barcelona to Paris, where tennis's French Open gets underway on Sunday, the second Grand Slam event of the year, seeing Rafa Nadal aiming for a record-extending 22nd major title. Meantime, 2018 Roland Garros champ Simona Halep of Romania enjoying a whole new lease of life right now under her new coach, Patrick Mouratoglou. A really powerful life transformation it has been too. Christina McFarlane now.
But take the habit to take the forehand there. Yeah. Bravo.
It's been a long time since Simona Halep has felt this good. But getting here involved a leap of faith. Leaving her home in Romania, moving to France, and partnering with the longtime coach of Serena Williams. But already, Patrick Mouratoglou is having an impact.
He brought that fire back super fast. I didn't really expect that because I'm not very open to people and it's not easy for me to trust in somebody. So when I trust, I can make changes. The way of practice, the way he talks actually to me, the whole schedule is like making me be more professional than before. And working every day, I think you have a better chance to get to the top back. And I start believing that I still have the game to be there.
It's remarkable to see such a turnaround when a mere 3 months ago, Halep said she'd lost faith completely that she would ever reach the top again. Last year, after being forced to withdraw from the French Open, Wimbledon and the Tokyo Olympics due to a calf injury, Halep tumbled out of the world's top 10 for the first time in years.
How close did you come to throwing the towel in last year and walking away from tennis?
Very close because I had the biggest injury of my career and I didn't know actually at the start how to manage it. I was scared, I was low confidence because I felt like my body doesn't hold anymore. The pressure of pandemic, the bubbles, every tournament we had to stay in the room only. So I really suffered that year and I didn't see any light outside of the tunnel.
I think she's gone through a lot of extremely difficult moments in her career and she found a way to end up #1 in the world and double Grand Slam winner, which shows how strong she is mentally. And I feel that also she believes in herself and the combination can do wonders.
Why are you laughing?
The way he talks. I need some of this confidence.
And Patrick, for you, 10 years with Serena Williams, this is something new. How does it feel to be in a new era in some ways?
The past is the past. I'm super proud with what we've done with Serena, of course. I'm super thankful that for those 10 years that were incredible and she's trust me for 10 years, which is something that you don't see very often in the tennis world. You know, once you start something else, you have to be able to start fresh and be as excited as is the first job in your life, and that's 100% how I feel.
Simona, let's talk Roland Garros, because this of course was your first Grand Slam title in 2018, and given the way you are now feeling, how excited are you to get back to the French Open this year?
Well, I'm always excited to be back in Paris and to French Open. It's my favorite Grand Slam, and being the first one made it very special. Very special feeling. I'm ready mentally, I'm ready to give my best. I think it's the only one thing that I can do in this moment. I just need to start believing more and more and to see how good I can be in this tournament.
Is Simona one of the favourites, Patrick?
No, she's not. No, she's not the favourite. We know who's the favourite, it's Iga. But I think everybody's beatable. I think that when Simona is at her best, I think she can beat anybody. So the plan is simple, is to bring her back to her best and if possible even better than before.
But to do that, Halep will first need to overcome her biggest opponent, herself.
I really thought I would be done by 30 and I will have kids, family, and that's it with tennis. But yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong and I don't want to stop. I want to play a few more years. I don't have an explanation, a good explanation about it. It was just the mentality that at 30 you are just old for tennis and you have to stop. So yeah.
Well, second life is starting.
I was going to say, Patrick, with Serena and everything she has won in her 30s.
It's a little bit too much.
What do you say to that?
We've seen players play the best tennis at 30 plus. Serena same. Because yeah, between 30 and 35 were her best years. So I think she's fresh. No, but really.
Yeah.
I feel she's fresh, completely.
Just getting
physically
started, Simona.
Yeah, the second part of the career. So I'm starting now, yeah, and I have great people around me, so I'm confident. Thank you.
Christina McFarlane, CNN, Nice.
A very powerful piece indeed. Thanks to Simona and Patrick there. There are many compelling storylines, of course, going into this year's French Open, with two players in particular as well in red-hot form right now. Here's our latest Rolex Minute for you. Back with reflections now on a star-studded night of NBA action here in the United States as the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks went head-to-head on Friday night. Battle of the megastars in this one. CNN Sports' Coy Wire now with the very latest. Coy.
Steph Curry and the Warriors put a beat down on Luka Doncic and his Mavs in Game 1. Luka had a scratch all across his face. They lost by 25, but the character of a fighter is revealed in how they respond after getting hit, and Luka Doncic is a fighter. Game 2, Western Conference Finals in San Francisco, and Luka came out swinging. He's reminding everyone that he's the NBA playoffs all-time points per game leader, ahead of Michael Jordan. After scoring just 20 in Game 1, Luka scores a game-high 42. Dallas running up a 19-point lead in the first half. The Slovenian superstar even getting a shout-out on Twitter from Warriors superfan MC Hammer. Okay, young Luka, we see you. But as we've seen time and time again, no matter how hard you hit him, no lead is safe with Steph Curry's Warriors on the floor. Curry dropping 32 points, including 6 three-pointers. And look at this, he actually says night-night as the ball's in the air when he nailed this one. Going to start calling that man Sandman, putting people to sleep like this. Warriors win 126-117, now a perfect 8-0 at home this postseason. How'd you do it, Steph?
We have that attitude and spirit, like we feel like we're never out of it. I think only one game this playoff run so far, like we've been severely outmatched from start to finish, but that belief then turns into execution in the game, and you can feel the momentum. It's more just focused on what we do. And when you have those opportunities to, stick the dagger or come up with 3 stops in a row, like those are the times where you feel that good energy going our way.
All right, here's to hoping lots of good energy going your way as well. We have top-seeded Heat and 2-seed Celtics facing off for Game 3 in Boston this fine Saturday, Pat. And fun fact time, teams that win Game 3 in a 1-1 series go on to advance around 70% of the time.
Ooh, thank you, Coy. We love fun facts. Thank you so much. Our next World Sports Show is coming to you live at 5 p.m. Eastern right here in the United States, 11 p.m. Central European time. We're going to leave you, though, with images from Turin ahead of today's Women's UEFA Champions League final. Barcelona and Lyon going head-to-head. The powerhouse French club going for an 8th title. Barcelona for a 2nd straight. They hope. Those are the scenes. Full match highlights later on, and analysis too from Beck Smith coming your way. Stick around, stay with CNN. Bye for now.
After more than 2 years of border closures due to the pandemic, countries in Southeast Asia are opening back up. From Thailand to Vietnam, a host of unique golf courses are on offer.
The speed at which golf is developing in this country is phenomenal.
And young homegrown talents making golf history.
I think the thing with Thai golfers is that we're very fortunate.
The region is betting big on golf as a symbol of economic development and a rising middle class.
There's no gender, no age, no limitation in golf. Everyone can play together.
On this month's Living Golf, we'll visit Asia's first replica course. Check out the action at a tournament in Thailand.
Can't disappoint when CNN's here.
And find out why Vietnam is angling to become the world's best golfing destination.
More than ever before, elite golf is a young person's sport. At present, the average age of the world's male top 10 players is just 28, and nowhere is that better exemplified than in Thailand, where we caught up with a teen sensation who's having a massive impact and really building on his country's proud legacy.
Whether it's golfing legend Tiger Woods, whose mother Kuntida comes from Kanchanaburi, Thailand.
There's a part of the Thai people that all look up to him because he's half of us, basically.
Thai pro golfer Thongchai Jaidi, with 20 professional wins under his belt.
He's Asian Tour legend, won the European Tour several times, and I've been very fortunate to meet him in person.
Or rising star Patty Tavatanakit, a Bangkok native who became her country's first major winner at the 2021 ANA Inspiration. There's something in the water in Thailand that's producing top talent.
I think the thing with Thai golfers is that we're very fortunate as juniors. Like, we would have tournament every single week, and I think Thai parents are pretty competitive as well, so they push their kids hard, and those who come out still loving the game of golf, I think, can go really far.
Ratchanon Chantananawat, aka TK, is a Thai golf sensation.
A 15-year-old wonderkind who first picked up a club at the tender age of 3.5, heavily influenced by his father.
My dad especially had a lot of love for the game, and I just followed him to the range, started hitting plastic balls, plastic clubs, and apparently I was flying it okay, and then he got me into some proper clubs a little bit later than that, and then he took me to compete when I was a little bit past 4 for the first time. My dad loved Tiger. I watch his replays, and he'd tell me stories of all his great accomplishments.
TK, whose nickname is a combination of the first initials of his parents' names, says he still remembers experiencing his first loss when he was 4.
I saw the kid who got the trophy, and I got really, really jealous, and I didn't know why I didn't get one. So I was really upset, and then my dad had to explain to me how he won, so he got the trophy. So for that next month, he practiced me really hard, and I got a trophy. After that, I enjoyed that, and I think I just developed a love for golf.
That love for golf has taken him far. In January, he almost became the youngest ever winner at 14 years old on the Asian Tour at the Singapore International.
I finished 3rd in my first ever international pro event, so that was great.
Today at the Siam Country Club in the beachside town of Pattaya, TK is playing the Trust Golf Asian Mixed Series, a competition held jointly on the Asian Tour and Ladies European Tour.
Can't disappoint when CNN's here. Honestly, a Ladies European Tour, I don't know what they're like. I don't know how good they can play. With an Asian Tour field, I'm pretty confident, but this week, I think I'm just not going to overlook the cut line.
With his father caddying, TK says that his life revolves entirely around school and golf. He says he doesn't have plans to turn pro just yet and is considering studying physics in college.
So I think that one of the pitfalls that people really try to warn me is burning out, because obviously I practice pretty hard, especially when I don't have school. I practice really hard, 7, 8, 9 hours a day. I don't get much day offs, and people tell me just watch out, take a day off, don't burn out. But I don't see it happening. I love golf. I love practicing. Yes, it's hard, it hurts, and it takes in a lot of discipline, but even just 2 months of super hard work just to get that one good shot or just a good result, I think it pays off for me.
And payoff it did. TK was on fire, shooting a 7-under par 65 to finish on 20 under and claim the $750,000 Trust Golf Asian Mixed Cup, thus becoming the youngest ever male player to win on one of golf's major tours. But the newly crowned champ doesn't let himself dwell on the historic moment for too long.
Trying to balance school and golf is really hard because, you know, it's very stereotypical, not just golf, but apparently if you're an athlete, you can't do good in school. I'm trying to change that. I'd love to do well in both and prove all the doubters wrong.
Nurturing young golfers, whether amateur or professional, requires investment in competitive opportunities and title sponsorships. In Southeast Asia, the return of the Asian Tour this year after a 20-month hiatus due to the pandemic spells big opportunity for the region's players.
"30 minutes from pleasure-seeking Pattaya is the Siam Country Club Waterside. An 18-hole par 72 course featuring lakes and creeks spread over 300 acres. In April, the course played host to the Trust Golf Asian Mixed Series, a collaboration between the Asian Tour and the Ladies European Tour. For CEO and Commissioner of the Asian Tour, Cho Min Tant, it's a relief to see players back on the fairway.
Coming back out of the COVID pandemic, we really didn't know where we would be. We're lucky to be in this position where we've actually come back stronger than ever.
Tant calls 2022 a rebirth for the Asian Tour. After a long 20 months of pandemic-related inactivity, he's come to Pattaya to attend the tour's first ever mixed event.
And the thing that excites me the most is the untapped potential in Asia. I mean, there's lots of destinations which are very familiar to tourists in terms of golf tourism. You've got Thailand, which is #1 on everyone's travel list. You've got Indonesia with destinations like Bali. You've got the Philippines, you've got Vietnam, you've got Singapore, Malaysia. And I feel that it's very underdeveloped, and there's an opportunity for us to really grow in these markets.
Thai entrepreneur Prin Singanat is also bullish on the future of the sport in her country. In 2019, she founded Trust Golf, a development centre in Bangkok where technology like augmented reality and robotics is being leveraged to empower golfers with data on their performance. For Singanat, it's also about sponsoring tournaments.
We have the talent, but we need the stage for them to play. So to create that opportunity for the kids to play, it means I got to own a tournament. I got to create the tournament. I got to sponsor the tournament so that I can get that exemptions for all this that I'm incubating to play.
As a trained physicist, Singanat approaches the incubation of Thai talent with a scientific rigor. Her hypothesis that young players need inspiration, development, and most crucially, the opportunity to compete.
After being nurtured here in Thailand for a while, are they ready to step up? Are they ready to go out there? Seeing the leaderboard, I'm pleased. I cannot be more proud. Lots of Thai flag is out there already.
We like to show the kids out there that golf is a viable career. And now that the prize monies and the number of tournaments on the Asian Tour is increasing, I hope they look at golf as a viable option as a career.
Singanat says she's also motivated by more personal reasons.
I'm a selfish mom. The only sport that would allow me, when I'm 50, that my son would also take me to play and to introduce with his friend is the golf course. So that is part of it. And there's no gender, no age, no limitation in golf. Everyone can play together. So that's the thing.
For Tant, this moment is a new era for Asian golf.
I'm really happy to see the Asian Tour growing, and instead of our players having to go to Europe and go to other tours to make a good living, they're hopefully going to stay in Asia and develop their skills right here in front of us and become world-class players by playing in Asia.
It's about pathway. I'm creating a pathway for the golfer right now. It's not only for us in Thailand, but right now, because as a Thai, I need a subject. I need a subject to prove my theory that if we provide them inspiration, development, and opportunity, anyone in this entire world, giving them that, they can go somewhere within 2 years, they'll make a blast. You can create a star.
Visiting the world's most famous golf courses from Scotland to the United States requires deep pockets and ample leisure time. But just outside Thailand's capital, we visited a replica golf course, which might just be the next best thing.
As many as 63 holes pepper the Royal Gems City Golf Club, an hour's drive outside of Bangkok. And what makes this 560-acre property special might be a familiar sight to any golf enthusiast. Billing itself as Asia's first replica course, RG City boasts 18 holes that are inspired by some of the world's most iconic golf courses. There's the notorious Amen Corner from Augusta National, as well as the picturesque postage stamp from Scotland's Royal Troon.
Fortunately, my first shot found the church pew bunker here at the inspired hole of Oakmont number 4. Well, that was a good shot. Many golfers aspire to play at the holes they see on TV, although it's difficult because the clubs that are featured in the professional tournaments are either private members clubs that don't allow visitors or very, very expensive.
Mark Siegel is the owner and managing director of Golf Asian, one of Southeast Asia's largest golf tour operators. Siegel says the main draw of this Thai course is that visitors can play largely faithful facsimiles of golf's most rarefied locales.
Okay, here we are at a hole that's been inspired by the TPC Sawgrass 17th hole, which is normally played as the 71st hole of the Tournament Players Championship. About approximately 1 month ago, this hole was played in 0-degree weather. Today we're in 90-degree weather.
With its peninsula concept for the green, this replica hole mimics its Floridian original down to the lone tree perched on a small island.
This course consists of 2 nines. The front 9 are in holes that are inspired by 9 famous holes from around the world. 4 of them are from the United States, and then 4 of them are from Europe and one from England. So we can go back and forth between Florida and the UK in about 10 steps, whereas a supersonic transport couldn't even make it that quick. The back 9's a little different. It's 9 holes inspired by the back 9 of Augusta National from Augusta, Georgia.
In 1997, Siegel founded Golf Asian in Bangkok with an aim to give lessons to golf tourists. He says his company pivoted quickly to organizing golf vacations. For him, the biggest appeal for golfers traveling to Southeast Asia might not actually be the golf itself.
The value of coming to Southeast Asia to play golf is not the golf. If someone wants to play good golf, I have one recommendation for them: stay home, because there's very, very good golf in most countries of the world. The attraction to play golf in Asia is really the outside of the golf, particularly the service, the costs, the culture, the weather, and friendship that people make when they're traveling.
Golf came to Southeast Asia as a result of colonialism and exchanges with Europeans. The French built the first course in Vietnam in the 1920s, while golf was introduced to Thailand in the late 1800s by members of the royal family after their travels to Europe. Today, Thailand is home to more than 250 golf courses. And despite the lack of tourism over the last couple of years, Siegel says that courses in Thailand actually benefited during the pandemic.
The domestic demand for golf here, Vietnam and most other countries is up 15–20% from the pre-pandemic levels already. A, it's a very socially distant sport compared to others. B, the golfers had no place to travel to, so they played more at home. And C, a lot of people had a lot of time, so golf takes a lot of time. Entering the sport was a good time to do that.
As for the state of golf tourism in the region, Siegel says it'll take some time to recover, and that courses like RG City are one of the ways to lure golfers to the region.
We started to see business pick up about 6 months ago. We're maybe about 15% of the pre-pandemic levels now. I think it'll take 1 or 2 more years to get back up to 2019 levels. So one of the best things about living here and golfing here is a 365-day-a-year sport. The temperature is hot and humid throughout the years, so it's minimal to golf all the time.
After more than 2 years of border closures, Vietnam is once again open for business, and the Southeast Asian country is betting big on golf tourism. With dozens of courses dotted along its 3,000 kilometers of coastline, Vietnam was awarded World's Best Golf Destination at the World Golf Awards in 2021. And we traveled there to find out why.
There are 4 promising Vietnamese junior golfers between 10 and 15 years old. Today they're being trained by Tang Thi Nung, Vietnam's first female professional golfer turned coach.
My ambition and my goal for junior in Vietnam is actually first I want to build up as many junior play golf as I can. I'm not so much focused about the quality and the level of play, but I just want a lot of junior play and they have fun and they have opportunity to know golf and learn about golf.
Nung says that introducing as many youngsters to the sport as possible makes sense in light of what she calls a booming golf industry in the country. These young golfers are playing at the Bluffs Ho Tram Strip, opened in 2014 and a 3-hour drive from Ho Chi Minh City. It's an 18-hole championship golf course set amid the windswept dunes of southern Vietnam and designed by the great white shark, Greg Norman.
You only need to look at the piece of land that Greg Norman was gifted to work with. You know, it's a wonderful piece of land so close to the ocean, and the undulations and the dunes that have been formed over hundreds and hundreds of years lean perfectly to a links-style golf course, which this is.
Gary Dixon is the golf general manager of the Bluffs. He says the pace of golf's development in Vietnam reminds him of his native Australia back in the 1980s.
The speed at which golf is developing in this country is phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it before.
In the resort-strewn coastal city of Da Nang in central Vietnam, another property is noted for being the home of 2 courses designed by golfing greats Greg Norman and Jack Nicklaus.
Here you have the Norman course, which was the first course in Da Nang. It's a very natural links course called the Dunes, and it has the most wonderful topography and challenge and coastal views and mature trees and rolling links. And it's a really classic golf course that's been in the top 100 in the world for many, many years now. Then we contrast that with the new Nicklaus design bulkhead course, which has vertical walls of North American hardwood that abut bodies of water directly next to greens and fairways, and create this total contrast between 2 courses, whereby you could be in 2 different countries playing each course.
Mark Reeves oversees all of the golf projects developed by BRG Group, a Hanoi-based conglomerate whose core businesses lie in its initials: banking, real estate, and of course, golf. He says that Vietnam has distinct advantages when it comes to the sport.
12-month season, wonderful, friendly people, a high standard of course development. It's just a wonderful place to visit and enjoy.
BRG Group currently owns and operates 7 18-hole courses across Vietnam, making them one of the biggest golf developers in the country. The company's chairman, Nguyen Chi Nha, says she first discovered golf in 1999, when she became the owner of Kings Island Golf Course on the outskirts of Hanoi.
Back then, there were no more than 10 golf courses in total, but now the number is close to 100. The growth is very healthy. When I bought my first golf course, I was only doing business in real estate and banking. I wasn't a golf expert. Now, after playing golf for 17 years, I love golf courses and love playing golf. Every time I play, I feel like I'm 20 years younger.
With Vietnam reopening its borders earlier this year, Nha says she's confident that overseas golfers will be impressed by her country's offerings. BRG is currently developing 2 new courses, one in the Red River Delta as well as the former imperial city of Hue. For Nha, golf is as much a passion project as it is a business opportunity.
Talking about golf, this is the sport that, for me, it's like my life, and it is also my love. I think Vietnam can be regarded as the world's best golf destination for many years to come. I hope that golf will be a main component of the tourism industry in Vietnam.